Picture this. The year is 320 BCE, and while Alexander the Great's empire crumbles into warring fragments, two of history's most formidable civilizations are about to forge an alliance that will reshape the ancient world forever. The Mauryan Empire, fresh from unifying the Indian subcontinent under Chandragupta Maurya's iron fist, extends its hand across the known world to the rising Gupta dynasty. Together, they're about to unleash a military and economic juggernaut that will set its sights on the greatest powers of the Mediterranean, Rome and Carthage. What you're about to discover isn't just another alternate history tale. This is a deep dive into one of the most explosive what-if scenarios in human civilization, where Eastern philosophy meets Western ambition, where war elephants charge through Roman legions, and where the fate of three continents hangs in the balance. By the end of this journey, you'll understand exactly how this alliance could have rewritten every history book you've ever read. I'm going to walk you through the military genius, the political maneuvering, and the sheer audacity that would have been required to pull off the most ambitious conquest in ancient history. We'll explore the weapons, the strategies, and the key figures who could have made this impossible dream a terrifying reality for Rome and Carthage alike. But here's what makes this scenario absolutely mind-bending. I've spent months researching ancient military tactics, studying archaeological evidence, and consulting with historians to piece together not just what could have happened, but exactly how it would have unfolded step by bloody step. The details I'm about to reveal will show you why this alliance represents perhaps the greatest missed opportunity in world history, and why its success would have created a world so different from our own that we might not even recognize it today. Let me start by painting you a picture of the world stage in 320 BCE, because understanding the political landscape is crucial to grasping why this alliance would have been so devastatingly effective. Rome is still clawing its way to dominance in the Italian peninsula. The city that would one day rule the Mediterranean is currently locked in brutal conflicts with the Samnites, desperately trying to secure its own backyard. Their legendary military machine exists, sure, but it's nowhere near the unstoppable force it would become centuries later. Picture Rome as a dangerous but still regional power, hungry for expansion, but not yet the apex predator we remember from history books. Meanwhile, Carthage controls the western Mediterranean with its merchant fleets and mercenary armies. They're wealthy beyond imagination, their trade networks spanning from Spain to the Levant. But here's the thing, they're completely focused on their rivalry with emerging Greek powers and the growing Roman threat. Their attention is locked on the west and north, leaving their eastern flanks essentially unguarded. Now here's where it gets interesting. The Mauryan Empire under Chandragupta Maurya has just accomplished something unprecedented: the complete unification of the Indian subcontinent. We're talking about an empire that stretches from Afghanistan to Bengal, commanding resources and manpower that would make Mediterranean powers weep with envy. Their army isn't just massive, it's revolutionary. War elephants, iron weapons, sophisticated siege technology, and military organization that rivals anything the Greeks or Romans have developed. But the Mauryans have a problem. They've conquered everything they can reasonably reach, and their expansion westward is blocked by the remnants of Alexander's empire. The Seleucid successors control the crucial territories between India and the Mediterranean, creating a buffer that prevents direct Mauryan expansion toward Europe and Africa. Enter the Guptas. Now historically, the Gupta Empire doesn't rise to prominence until the 4th century CE, but in our scenario we're imagining an earlier emergence of Gupta power, perhaps as a vassal state or allied kingdom within the Mauryan sphere. The Guptas bring something crucial to this alliance: naval expertise and knowledge of maritime trade routes that the land-based Mauryans lack. Here's where the genius of this alliance becomes clear. The Mauryans provide the military muscle, the administrative expertise, and the sheer numerical advantage. The Guptas contribute naval knowledge, trade connections, and crucially, the maritime technology needed to project power across the Indian Ocean and into the Mediterranean. But why would these two powers even consider such an audacious campaign? The answer lies in economics and strategic thinking that's centuries ahead of its time. First, let's talk about motivation. The Mauryans under Chandragupta aren't content with just ruling India. They're expansionists by nature, and their political philosophy, heavily influenced by Chanakya's Arthashastra, emphasizes constant growth and the acquisition of new territories to maintain imperial stability. Sitting still isn't an option for an empire of this size and ambition. The Guptas, meanwhile, are traders and explorers at heart. They understand that controlling Mediterranean trade routes would make them fabulously wealthy, while simultaneously cutting off the economic lifelines that keep Rome and Carthage powerful. It's not just about conquest, it's about economic warfare on a scale the ancient world has never seen. Now here's what makes this alliance truly terrifying from a Roman and Carthaginian perspective: the element of complete surprise. Neither Mediterranean power has any experience fighting Indian military tactics. They've never faced war elephants in organised formations. They've never encountered the sophisticated archery techniques of Indian armies. They've never dealt with the logistical capabilities of an empire that routinely moves and supplies armies numbering in the hundreds of thousands. The psychological impact alone would be devastating. Imagine being a Roman legionnaire who spent his career fighting Gauls and Samnites, suddenly facing a line of massive war elephants, backed by disciplined infantry formations using weapons and tactics you've never encountered. The terror factor can't be overstated. But let's get into the nuts and bolts of how this alliance would actually execute such an ambitious campaign, because the logistics are where this scenario gets really fascinating. The key to success lies in the route of attack. Rather than trying to march overland through hostile Seleucid territory, our Maurya and Gupta alliance would leverage their combined naval capabilities to launch a maritime assault. Using Gupta knowledge of monsoon patterns and Indian Ocean trade routes, they would establish a naval base in the Arabian Peninsula, possibly in modern-day Yemen or Oman. From there, the strategy becomes brilliantly simple yet devastatingly effective. While maintaining the appearance of focusing on their traditional enemies in the east, the alliance secretly builds up a massive expeditionary force in their Arabian base. We're talking about a combined army of perhaps 200,000 troops, including 5,000 war elephants, supported by a fleet capable of maintaining supply lines across the Indian Ocean. The target isn't Rome or Carthage directly. That would be suicide. Instead, they strike at Egypt. Here's why Egypt is the perfect target. It's fabulously wealthy, relatively lightly defended, and absolutely crucial to both Roman and Carthaginian economies. The Ptolemaic kingdom that controls Egypt in 320 BCE is a shadow of its former self, torn by internal conflicts and dependent on mercenary armies that wouldn't stand a chance against disciplined Mauryan forces. Capturing Egypt accomplishes several strategic objectives simultaneously. First, it provides the alliance with a secure base of operations in the Mediterranean basin. Second, it cuts off grain supplies that both Rome and Carthage depend on for feeding their populations. Third, it gives the alliance control over the immensely profitable trade routes between Africa, Asia, and Europe. But here's the stroke of genius that makes this entire scenario plausible. The alliance doesn't try to hold Egypt through military occupation alone. Instead, they implement a sophisticated hearts and minds campaign that draws on centuries of Indian administrative experience. The Mauryans are masters of governing diverse populations. Their empire includes dozens of different ethnic groups, languages, and religious traditions, all held together through a combination of local autonomy and central authority. They understand something that Rome and Carthage haven't figured out yet. Sustainable conquest requires winning over the local population, not just defeating their armies. In Egypt, this means respecting local religious traditions, maintaining existing trade relationships, and offering the Egyptian elite positions in the new administration. The Maurya and Gupta alliance presents itself not as foreign conquerors, but as liberators who will restore Egypt's ancient glory, while connecting it to the vast wealth of the Indian Ocean trade network. The Egyptian population, ground down by years of Ptolemaic misrule and heavy taxation, might actually welcome this change. Suddenly, Egyptian merchants have access to Indian spices, Chinese silk, and Southeast Asian goods at wholesale prices. Egyptian farmers benefit from Indian agricultural techniques that increase crop yields. Egyptian artisans learn new technologies that make their products more competitive in international markets. Within a year of the initial conquest, Egypt isn't just occupied territory, it's a thriving commercial hub that's more prosperous than it's been in generations. This economic transformation serves a crucial strategic purpose. It demonstrates to other Mediterranean populations that Maurya and Gupta rule brings prosperity, not oppression. Now, while this Egyptian campaign is unfolding, what are Rome and Carthage doing? Initially, they're probably celebrating. Two of their most dangerous potential rivals are apparently focused on conquering each other's territory in the distant east. The destruction of Ptolemaic Egypt might even be seen as an opportunity to acquire new territories or trading partners. But as reports start filtering back about the true nature of the new regime in Egypt, panic begins to set in. Roman and Carthaginian merchants who have lost their privileged trading positions start pressuring their governments to take action. Military intelligence reports describe army compositions and tactical approaches that neither Mediterranean power has any experience countering. The first direct confrontation comes when a Carthaginian fleet attempts to reassert control over Egyptian ports. The result is a naval disaster that shocks the ancient world. Gupta naval tactics, refined through centuries of Indian Ocean warfare, proved devastatingly effective against Carthaginian galleys designed for Mediterranean conditions. The Maurya and Gupta fleet doesn't just defeat the Carthaginian expedition, it annihilates it. Advanced ship designs, superior navigation techniques, and coordinated tactics learned from fighting pirates and rival kingdoms across the Indian Ocean make the Allied fleet essentially unstoppable in direct combat. Word of this naval victory spreads like wildfire throughout the Mediterranean. Suddenly, the Maurya and Gupta alliance isn't just another Eastern kingdom, it's an existential threat to the established order. Rome and Carthage, despite their bitter rivalry, begin to realize they might need each other to survive what's coming. But here's where the alliance's strategy becomes truly masterful. Rather than immediately pressing their advantage with direct attacks on Roman or Carthaginian territory, they begin a campaign of economic and political warfare that's centuries ahead of its time. Egyptian gold starts flowing into Indian treasuries, but more importantly, it starts flowing into the pockets of Mediterranean merchants who are willing to work with the new regime. Suddenly, Greek traders who've been shut out of lucrative Eastern markets find themselves with exclusive access to Indian silk routes. Italian merchants discover they can acquire precious stones and spices at prices that undercut their traditional Carthaginian suppliers by 50%. This isn't just trade, it's economic warfare disguised as business opportunity. The alliance is systematically buying loyalty throughout the Mediterranean world, creating a network of merchants, politicians, and military commanders who have a vested interest in Maurya and Gupta's success. The psychological impact on Rome and Carthage is devastating. Their own citizens are getting rich by collaborating with the enemy. Worse yet, the traditional Mediterranean trade routes that have funded their military expansion for centuries are being systematically dismantled and redirected toward Indian Ocean networks. Picture the panic in the Roman Senate when they realize that the grain ships they depend on to feed their population are now controlled by foreign powers who could starve Rome into submission without ever sending a single soldier across the Mediterranean. Imagine the horror of Carthaginian merchant princes discovering that their centuries-old monopolies on African trade goods have been shattered by competitors who can offer superior products at lower prices. But the alliance isn't content with economic pressure alone. They understand that military reputation is crucial to maintaining their new position, so they begin a series of carefully calculated military demonstrations designed to showcase their overwhelming tactical superiority. The first target is Cyrenaica, the Greek colony on the North African coast. It's wealthy, strategically located, and defended by exactly the kind of traditional Mediterranean military forces that the alliance wants to humiliate. The campaign is swift, brutal, and absolutely devastating to traditional military thinking. Mauryan were elephants, something the defenders have only heard about in travellers' tales, smash through Greek phalanx formations like they're made of papyrus. Indian archers, using composite bows with ranges far exceeding anything the Greeks possess, decimate enemy formations before they can even engage in close combat. Most shocking of all, Mauryan siege engineers demonstrate techniques for rapidly constructing and deploying siege equipment that reduces supposedly impregnable fortifications to rubble in a matter of days. The fall of Cyrenaica sends shockwaves throughout the Mediterranean world. Military experts who have spent their careers studying Greek and Roman tactical innovations suddenly realize they're dealing with an entirely different level of warfare. Reports describe Indian military engineering capabilities that seem almost supernatural to observers accustomed to traditional siege methods. But here's what makes this demonstration truly terrifying. The alliance doesn't just conquer Cyrenaica, they transform it. Within months, the city becomes a thriving commercial hub connected to Indian Ocean trade networks. The population, initially hostile to foreign occupation, becomes enthusiastically supportive as their standard of living improves dramatically. Greek colonists who expected to be enslaved or expelled instead find themselves offered positions in the new administration. Local artisans discover markets for their products that they never knew existed. Farmers learn agricultural techniques that double their crop yields while requiring less labour. This transformation serves a crucial strategic purpose. It demonstrates to every other Mediterranean city-state that resistance is futile while collaboration is incredibly profitable. The alliance isn't offering conquest, they're offering partnership in the most lucrative economic network the ancient world has ever seen. Meanwhile, Roman and Carthaginian military planners are desperately trying to figure out how to counter threats they've never encountered. Roman military doctrine, refined through centuries of fighting European tribal warriors, is completely inadequate for dealing with disciplined Eastern armies backed by war elephants and advanced siege technology. Carthaginian military leaders, accustomed to hiring mercenary armies from familiar Mediterranean populations, discover that their traditional recruiting grounds have been compromised. Why fight for Carthaginian silver when Indian merchants are offering gold for peaceful cooperation? The alliance exploits this confusion ruthlessly. Rather than launching immediate attacks on Roman or Carthaginian heartlands, they begin systematically isolating their enemies by capturing or neutralizing every strategic location in the eastern Mediterranean. Cyprus falls after a brief siege that showcases Mauryan naval capabilities. The island's strategic position makes it perfect for controlling sea lanes between Egypt and the Levant, while its copper mines provide resources crucial for weapons manufacturing. More importantly, Cyprus's fall cuts off one of Rome's most reliable sources of military metals. Crete becomes the next target, and its conquest demonstrates the alliance's growing sophistication in combined arms warfare. Gupta naval forces establish complete maritime supremacy around the island, while Mauryan land forces demonstrate siege techniques that Roman military observers describe as impossible. The defenders of Crete's major cities expect traditional siege warfare. Months of blockade followed by gradual weakening of fortifications through constant bombardment. Instead, they face Mauryan engineers who can construct siege towers and battering rams on site using materials and techniques that allow them to breach supposedly impregnable walls in days rather than months. But the real shock comes when Cretan defenders attempt to break the siege through traditional cavalry charges. Mauryan war elephants, supported by disciplined infantry formations and devastating archery, don't just repel these attacks, they annihilate them so completely that surviving defenders lose all will to continue fighting. The psychological impact spreads throughout the Mediterranean world. Military commanders who have built their careers on traditional tactical approaches suddenly realize they're facing enemies who operate by completely different rules. Weapons, tactics, and strategies that have dominated Mediterranean warfare for centuries are revealed as obsolete overnight. Roman military intelligence reports from these campaigns make for terrifying reading. Legionnaire accounts describe Indian composite bows with ranges that exceed Roman artillery. Engineering reports detail siege techniques that accomplish in days what Roman methods require months to achieve. Most disturbing of all, tactical analyses reveal coordination between different military branches that Roman commanders can barely comprehend. The alliance's military success isn't just about superior weapons or tactics, though those certainly play a role. It's about organizational capabilities developed through centuries of managing vast, diverse territories. Mauryan armies don't just fight, they adapt in real time to changing battlefield conditions using communication and command systems that allow unprecedented tactical flexibility. Roman centurions accustomed to rigid formation fighting find themselves facing enemies who can seamlessly transition between different tactical approaches mid-battle. Cavalry charges that should disrupt enemy formations instead encounter disciplined spear walls backed by war elephants. Infantry assaults designed to exploit perceived weaknesses run into devastating crossfire from archers positioned with mathematical precision. But perhaps most disturbing from a Roman perspective is the alliance's approach to conquered populations. Romans understand conquest through domination. You defeat the enemy army, occupy their territory, extract tribute, and impose your culture on the defeated population. It's a model that has worked for centuries in Italy. The Mauryan Gupta approach is completely different and far more dangerous. They conquer through integration, offering defeated populations better lives under their rule than they had under their previous governments. It's not just military conquest, it's cultural and economic seduction on a massive scale. Cities that should be centres of resistance instead become enthusiastic supporters of the new regime. Populations that should be providing intelligence and supplies to Roman or Carthaginian forces are instead actively helping the alliance identify strategic targets and optimal attack routes. This cultural transformation creates intelligence networks that traditional Mediterranean powers can't counter. Every merchant, every sailor, every traveller becomes a potential source of information for alliance military planners. Roman troop movements are reported before they are even completed. Carthaginian naval preparations are known in Egyptian ports before the ships leave their home harbours. The alliance exploits this intelligence advantage ruthlessly, launching strikes that seem to anticipate enemy movements with supernatural precision. Roman expeditionary forces find themselves ambushed in locations where ambush should be impossible. Carthaginian fleets discover that their supposedly secret bases have been compromised before they even arrive. By 315 BCE, just 5 years after the initial conquest of Egypt, the balance of power in the Mediterranean has shifted so dramatically that Rome and Carthage face a stark choice: unite against the common threat or face destruction separately. The irony is devastating. Two powers that have spent generations building toward inevitable conflict suddenly discover they need each other to survive. The Roman-Carthaginian wars that should define the next century of Mediterranean history are postponed indefinitely as both powers scramble to address an existential threat from the east. But even their combined resources might not be enough. The alliance has spent 5 years building an economic and military infrastructure that spans 3 continents. Their supply lines stretch from the Ganges to the Nile, supported by commercial networks that generate more wealth than Rome and Carthage combined. More crucially, they've demonstrated military and organizational capabilities that traditional Mediterranean powers simply cannot match. War elephants are just the beginning. The real advantage lies in logistics, intelligence, and the ability to coordinate complex operations across vast distances with a precision that seems almost modern. Roman and Carthaginian military leaders studying alliance tactics realize they're not just facing superior enemies, they're facing enemies who represent an entirely different evolutionary stage of warfare. It's like Bronze Age warriors trying to fight opponents who've already entered the Iron Age. The question isn't whether Rome and Carthage can defeat this alliance individually. They clearly cannot. The question is whether their combined forces, fighting desperately for survival, can develop new tactics and strategies quickly enough to avoid complete annihilation. And that question leads us to the next phase of this alternate history, where the greatest military minds of the ancient world are forced to reinvent warfare itself or watch their civilizations disappear beneath the weight of an Eastern juggernaut that seems unstoppable. The stage is set for battles that will make Cannae and Zama look like minor skirmishes, campaigns that will determine not just the fate of individual empires, but the entire direction of human civilization. Because if this alliance succeeds, the world that emerges will be so fundamentally different from our own that we might not recognize it as the same planet. The alliance's next move would come as a complete shock to both Roman and Carthaginian strategists, because it defies every conventional understanding of ancient warfare. Instead of pressing their advantage through direct military confrontation, the Maurya Gupta leadership implements what we might recognize today as a form of asymmetric warfare that's absolutely revolutionary for the ancient world. Picture this. While Roman and Carthaginian generals are frantically preparing for massive set-piece battles, the alliance launches something far more insidious. They begin systematically targeting the economic infrastructure that keeps Mediterranean civilization functioning. But they're not doing it through traditional siege warfare or naval blockades. They're doing it through what amounts to ancient corporate warfare. Here's how it works. The alliance has spent 5 years building commercial relationships throughout the Mediterranean world. Egyptian gold and Indian luxury goods have created networks of merchants, bankers, and traders who are making fortunes by working with the new regime. Now the alliance activates these networks for military purposes in ways that Roman and Carthaginian leaders never saw coming. Suddenly, Roman grain imports from Sicily become unreliable because Sicilian merchants have discovered they can make 3 times as much profit selling to alliance traders. Carthaginian silver mines in Spain experience mysterious labour shortages as workers desert to join alliance-sponsored trading expeditions that pay better wages and offer opportunities for advancement. The genius of this strategy lies in its deniability. The alliance isn't technically attacking Roman or Carthaginian territory. They're simply offering better economic opportunities to populations that have been systematically exploited by their traditional rulers. It's not conquest, it's liberation through capitalism. Roman senators who demand military action against these economic disruptions find themselves in an impossible position. How do you declare war on merchants who are technically operating within legal frameworks? How do you attack trading networks that are making your own citizens wealthy? How do you counter an enemy who's winning your people's loyalty through prosperity rather than force? The psychological impact on traditional Mediterranean leadership is devastating. Everything they understand about power and control suddenly seems obsolete. Military force, the ultimate arbiter of ancient politics, becomes irrelevant when your enemies can achieve their objectives through economic incentives. But the alliance isn't content with economic warfare alone. They understand that demonstrating overwhelming military superiority is crucial for maintaining the credibility that makes their economic strategies effective. So they begin planning the most audacious military campaign in ancient history, a simultaneous assault on both Roman and Carthaginian heartlands. The logistics alone should make this impossible. Coordinating attacks across thousands of miles of territory, maintaining supply lines that stretch across multiple continents, synchronizing operations between forces that speak different languages and follow different tactical traditions. It's the kind of challenge that has defeated every empire in history. Except the Maurya and Gupta alliance has been preparing for exactly this challenge for decades. Their administrative systems, refined through governing the diverse populations of the Indian subcontinent, are specifically designed to coordinate complex operations across vast distances. Their communication networks, based on relay systems developed for managing trade routes, can transmit strategic information faster than any Mediterranean power thought possible. Here's where it gets really interesting. The alliance doesn't plan to invade Roman and Carthaginian territory directly. Instead, they're going to force their enemies to come to them, in locations and under circumstances that maximize every possible Maurya and Gupta advantage. The strategy unfolds like a chess master playing against amateurs. First, alliance forces begin systematically occupying every major island in the central Mediterranean. Malta, Sardinia, Corsica, each falls in rapid succession to combine naval and land operations that showcase different aspects of alliance military superiority. These aren't just conquests, they're military demonstrations designed to showcase specific capabilities. The assault on Malta demonstrates Mauryan siege engineering techniques that can reduce fortified positions to rubble in days rather than weeks. The Sardinia campaign showcases Gupta naval tactics that can coordinate complex amphibious operations with clockwork precision. The conquest of Corsica reveals alliance intelligence capabilities that seem almost supernatural to observers. Each victory is accompanied by the same pattern that's become the alliance's signature: rapid transformation of conquered territory into thriving commercial hubs that offer better living conditions than the previous regime. Local populations don't just submit to occupation, they actively embrace their new rulers. Roman and Carthaginian military observers watching these campaigns realize they're witnessing something unprecedented in ancient warfare. This isn't just superior tactics or better weapons, though both are certainly present. This is a completely different philosophy of conquest that makes resistance seem not just futile, but actually counterproductive. Why fight against invaders who will make you wealthier and more secure? Why defend rulers who extract tribute when you could serve leaders who invest in infrastructure? Why maintain loyalty to governments that conscript your sons for foreign wars when you could join an empire that offers them careers in the most lucrative commercial network in the known world? The psychological warfare is devastating, but it's backed by military capabilities that make resistance genuinely suicidal. Roman expeditions sent to retake Malta encounter Mauryan war elephants, supported by artillery techniques that can target individual buildings from distances that Roman siege engines can't even reach. Carthaginian naval forces attempting to break the blockade of Sardinia face Gupta ship designs that can outmaneuver and outfight anything in the Mediterranean. But here's what makes this strategy truly brilliant. Every defeat suffered by Roman or Carthaginian forces becomes a recruitment opportunity for the alliance. Captured soldiers aren't enslaved or executed, they're offered positions in alliance armies at higher pay and with better conditions than they receive from their original commanders. Roman legionnaires who expected to die in battle instead find themselves offered training in advanced military techniques that will make them valuable officers in alliance expeditionary forces. Carthaginian marines discover that their naval experience is desperately needed for alliance operations in unfamiliar Mediterranean waters. The defection rate is staggering. Within months of beginning their island-hopping campaign, the alliance has absorbed thousands of experienced Mediterranean warriors who provide crucial intelligence about enemy tactics, while serving as proof that collaboration is more profitable than resistance. This creates a snowball effect that Roman and Carthaginian leadership can't counter through traditional means. Every military defeat not only weakens their forces numerically, it strengthens alliance capabilities by providing experienced soldiers who understand Mediterranean warfare intimately. Roman military doctrine built around the assumption that enemy forces will fight to the death for their homeland simply can't cope with opponents who are actively trying to recruit Roman soldiers for better paying positions in superior armies. How do you maintain military discipline when your enemies are offering your troops promotions and bonuses for switching sides? Carthaginian mercenary armies, already notorious for their questionable loyalty, begin deserting wholesale when alliance recruiters arrive with offers that triple their current pay while providing opportunities for advancement that Carthaginian commanders never considered offering. By 312 BCE, just 8 years after the initial conquest of Egypt, the balance of military power in the Mediterranean has shifted so dramatically that traditional strategic thinking becomes completely obsolete. Rome and Carthage aren't just facing superior enemies, they're facing enemies who are systematically absorbing their military capabilities while offering their populations better alternatives to traditional Mediterranean civilization. The alliance's next move reveals the full scope of their strategic genius. Rather than launching direct attacks on Roman or Carthaginian heartlands, they begin constructing what amounts to an ancient version of forward operating bases on every major island they've conquered. These aren't traditional military installations. They're integrated military commercial complexes that serve simultaneously as naval bases, army staging areas, trading centers, and administrative hubs. Each installation is designed to be completely self-sufficient while maintaining rapid communication and supply connections with alliance headquarters in Egypt and India. The construction techniques alone are revolutionary by Mediterranean standards. Mauryan engineers can excavate harbours and construct fortifications using methods that accomplish in months what traditional Mediterranean engineering requires years to complete. Gupta naval architects design port facilities that can accommodate ship designs far larger and more sophisticated than anything currently operating in Mediterranean waters. But the real innovation lies in the integration of military and commercial functions. These bases aren't just staging areas for military operations, they're economic powerhouses that generate revenue while projecting military force. Alliance merchants operating from these hubs can undercut traditional Mediterranean trade routes while simultaneously gathering intelligence for military planners. Roman and Carthaginian observers studying these installations realize they're witnessing something that challenges their fundamental understanding of how military power works. Traditional ancient warfare assumes that military operations consume resources that must be extracted from civilian populations through taxation or tribute. The alliance has created military installations that generate wealth while preparing for war. This economic integration provides strategic advantages that traditional Mediterranean powers simply can't match. Alliance military commanders don't need to worry about supply lines being cut because their bases are economically self-sufficient. They don't need to extract resources from conquered populations because their commercial operations generate more wealth than traditional tribute systems. More crucially, these integrated bases create positive feedback loops that make alliance military power stronger over time rather than weaker. Traditional ancient armies grow weaker as campaigns progress because they consume resources faster than they can acquire them. Alliance forces grow stronger because their economic activities generate resources faster than their military operations consume them. The implications are staggering. For the first time in ancient history, a military power has created a sustainable model for indefinite expansion that doesn't depend on exploiting conquered populations. The alliance can maintain large military forces indefinitely in foreign territory, while actually improving economic conditions for local populations. Roman military theorists studying this phenomenon realize they're witnessing the emergence of something that doesn't fit any existing category of ancient warfare. This isn't just a superior military, it's a superior civilization model that makes traditional Mediterranean approaches to power and governance seem primitive by comparison. The alliance's integrated approach extends to intelligence gathering in ways that leave Roman and Carthaginian security services completely outmatched. Every merchant, every sailor, every craftsman working in alliance commercial networks becomes a potential intelligence asset. Information flows through these networks faster and more accurately than traditional military intelligence systems can match. Roman troop movements are reported to alliance commanders before Roman generals have finished planning them. Carthaginian naval preparations are known in alliance bases before Carthaginian admirals have completed their logistics calculations. This intelligence advantage allows alliance forces to respond to threats before they fully develop, while positioning for opportunities that their enemies don't even realize exist yet. The psychological impact on Roman and Carthaginian leadership is crushing. How do you plan military operations when your enemies seem to know your intentions before you've fully formed them? How do you maintain operational security when the economic networks your civilization depends on are controlled by hostile powers? By 310 BCE, the strategic situation has become so desperate that Rome and Carthage are forced to consider options that would have been unthinkable just a decade earlier. Traditional rivalry between the two Mediterranean powers becomes irrelevant when both face extinction at the hands of an Eastern alliance that seems to grow stronger with every passing month. The first serious discussions about a Roman-Carthaginian military alliance begin in secret negotiations that both sides understand represent their only hope for survival. But even combined, their resources pale in comparison to what the Maurya and Gupta alliance has assembled. Roman military assessments estimate that the alliance can field combined forces of over 300,000 troops, including 8,000 war elephants and naval assets that outnumber all Mediterranean fleets combined. More disturbing, these forces are supported by economic networks that generate wealth faster than traditional taxation systems while maintaining supply lines that stretch across 3 continents. Carthaginian intelligence reports paint an even grimmer picture. Alliance commercial networks have penetrated so deeply into Mediterranean economic systems that any attempt to cut trade relationships would cause economic collapse in Roman and Carthaginian territories. The alliance hasn't just achieved military superiority, they've created economic dependencies that make resistance potentially suicidal. The numbers are stark and terrifying. Alliance-controlled territory now generates more tax revenue than Rome and Carthage combined. Alliance commercial networks handle more trade volume than all traditional Mediterranean routes. Alliance military forces, constantly reinforced by defectors and recruits from conquered territories, grow stronger while Roman and Carthaginian armies shrink through desertion and battlefield losses. But perhaps most disturbing from a strategic perspective, the alliance has demonstrated that their military and economic model is scalable in ways that traditional Mediterranean approaches are not. Every territory they conquer becomes more productive under their rule. Every population they govern becomes more prosperous and more loyal. Every military victory generates resources for additional expansion rather than consuming them. Roman senators debating whether to seek alliance with Carthage confront a horrifying realization. Even if Rome and Carthage combine their forces and achieve tactical victories against alliance armies, they lack the economic and administrative capabilities to compete with alliance governance systems in conquered territories. Traditional Roman approaches to provincial administration, extract tribute, maintain order through military force, impose Roman culture on conquered populations, simply can't compete with alliance methods that make conquered territories more prosperous while integrating them into transcontinental commercial networks. The alliance has achieved something that no ancient power has ever accomplished. They've created a model of expansion that becomes self-reinforcing rather than self-limiting. Traditional empires collapse under the weight of their own success as administrative costs exceed tribute revenues. The alliance grows stronger as it expands because their integrated military-commercial model generates wealth faster than it consumes resources. This realization leads to desperate strategic discussions in both Rome and Carthage about whether traditional Mediterranean civilization can survive contact with what appears to be a fundamentally superior organizational model. Military victory, even if achievable, might be irrelevant if alliance governance systems prove more attractive to Mediterranean populations than traditional Roman or Carthaginian rule. The stage is set for a confrontation that will determine not just the fate of individual empires, but the entire trajectory of human civilization. Because if the Maurya and Gupta alliance succeeds in establishing their integrated military-commercial model throughout the Mediterranean basin, the world that emerges will be so fundamentally different from traditional ancient civilization that it might represent a completely new phase of human development. The question isn't just whether Rome and Carthage can defeat this alliance militarily. The question is whether Mediterranean civilization as we understand it can adapt quickly enough to compete with organizational innovations that seem to represent the future of human governance. And that question leads us to the most crucial phase of this alternate history, where everything we think we know about ancient warfare is about to be turned upside down. The alliance's masterstroke comes in 309 BCE, with what historians would later call the Sicilian Gambit, a military operation so audacious and perfectly executed that it fundamentally changes how ancient warfare will be conducted forever. But here's what makes this operation absolutely brilliant. It's not really about Sicily at all. Sicily is just the bait in a trap designed to destroy Roman and Carthaginian military power in a single, catastrophic engagement. Let me walk you through exactly how this unfolds, because the level of strategic thinking involved is centuries ahead of anything the Mediterranean world has ever seen. The alliance begins by launching what appears to be a standard invasion of Sicily. Mauryan forces land on the eastern coast, while Gupta naval forces establish blockades around the major ports. From a Roman and Carthaginian perspective, this looks like exactly what they've been expecting: a direct assault on strategically crucial territory that both Mediterranean powers need to defend at all costs. Sicily isn't just any island. It's the grain basket that feeds Rome's growing population. It's the naval base that allows Carthage to project power into the central Mediterranean. It's the strategic choke point that controls access to the western Mediterranean trade routes. Both Rome and Carthage understand that losing Sicily means losing their ability to function as major powers, so they do exactly what the alliance is counting on. They commit everything they have to defending Sicily. Roman legions march south from Italy, while Carthaginian fleets sail north from Africa. For the first time in history, Roman and Carthaginian forces are going to fight side by side, their ancient rivalry temporarily set aside in the face of an existential threat. The combined Roman-Carthaginian force that converges on Sicily is massive by ancient standards. Nearly 80,000 Roman legionnaires, supported by 40,000 auxiliary troops and the largest fleet Rome has ever assembled. Carthage contributes 60,000 mercenaries, including their finest Numidian cavalry and Spanish infantry, backed by their most experienced naval commanders and their most advanced warships. This should be an overwhelming force. In any traditional Mediterranean conflict, 180,000 troops supported by combined Roman and Carthaginian naval power would be essentially unstoppable. The alliance forces on Sicily number only about 45,000 troops, including 2,000 war elephants. By every conventional measure, they're outnumbered 4-1 and facing the most formidable military coalition in Mediterranean history. But here's where the alliance's strategy reveals its true genius. Those 45,000 troops on Sicily aren't there to win a battle. They're there to hold Roman and Carthaginian attention while the real operation unfolds elsewhere. While every Roman and Carthaginian military asset is focused on Sicily, alliance forces launch simultaneous invasions of the Italian mainland and the North African coast. But these aren't the massive army groups that Mediterranean commanders expect. These are smaller, highly mobile forces designed to exploit the complete absence of defenders in Roman and Carthaginian heartlands. Picture this. 25,000 Mauryan troops land on the Italian coast near modern-day Naples. There are no Roman legions to oppose them because every available Roman soldier is in Sicily. There are no fortified positions because Roman military doctrine assumes that any serious threat will be met by Roman armies in the field, not at fixed defensive positions. The Mauryan force moves inland with a speed that shocks Roman observers. War elephants and cavalry cover distances that Roman intelligence assumed would take weeks to traverse. More crucially, the invasion force is accompanied by alliance administrators and merchants who immediately begin implementing the economic integration strategies that have proven so effective elsewhere. Italian towns that should be centres of resistance instead find themselves offered trading opportunities that dwarf anything they have experienced under Roman rule. Local populations that should be providing intelligence to Roman commanders are instead actively helping alliance forces identify strategic targets and optimal routes of advance. Within 2 weeks, alliance forces have captured Rome itself. Let that sink in for a moment. The Eternal City, the heart of Roman power, falls to a foreign army while the entire Roman military is trapped on an island 200 miles away, fighting what they think is the decisive battle for Mediterranean supremacy. But the capture of Rome isn't accomplished through traditional siege warfare. The alliance doesn't need to batter down walls or starve the population into submission. They simply offer Roman citizens better lives under alliance rule than they've ever had under the Senate and people of Rome. Roman merchants are offered exclusive access to Indian Ocean trade routes. Roman artisans are promised markets for their products that stretch from the Ganges to the Nile. Roman farmers are introduced to agricultural techniques that will triple their crop yields while reducing their labour requirements. The Roman Senate, faced with a population that's actively welcoming foreign occupation, capitulates without a fight. By the time Roman legions in Sicily receive word that their capital has fallen, the alliance has been governing Rome for 10 days, and the city is more prosperous than it's been in living memory. The simultaneous invasion of North Africa unfolds with equal precision. Carthaginian territories, stripped of defenders who are fighting in Sicily, fall to alliance forces that seem to appear out of nowhere. But again, these aren't traditional military conquests. They're economic transformations disguised as invasions. Carthaginian colonies that have spent centuries generating wealth for Carthaginian merchant princes suddenly find themselves offered partnership in commercial networks that dwarf traditional Mediterranean trade. African populations that have been systematically exploited by Carthaginian tribute systems are introduced to alliance administrative methods that actually invest in local infrastructure and development. The psychological impact is devastating. Carthaginian territories don't just submit to alliance rule, they actively request it. Local governors who should be organizing resistance instead send delegations to alliance commanders, asking to be incorporated into the new system as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, in Sicily, Roman and Carthaginian forces are discovering that their numerical superiority means nothing against enemies who understand warfare at a completely different level. The 45,000 alliance troops aren't trying to hold territory in the traditional sense. They're implementing a defense-in-depth strategy that uses Sicily's terrain to maximize every possible advantage. War elephants positioned in mountain passes make traditional cavalry charges impossible. Mauryan archers using composite bows with superior range can engage Roman and Carthaginian forces before those forces can respond effectively. Most devastating of all, alliance forces seem to know exactly where Roman and Carthaginian attacks will come from, allowing them to position defensive forces with mathematical precision. Roman centurions who have built their careers on disciplined formation, find themselves facing enemies who can seamlessly transition between different tactical approaches depending on terrain and circumstances. Carthaginian mercenary commanders, accustomed to fighting European tribal warriors, encounter organized opposition that can coordinate complex defensive operations across multiple geographic regions simultaneously. But the real shock comes when Roman and Carthaginian commanders realize that they're not just facing superior tactics, they're facing enemies who have access to intelligence that seems almost supernatural. Every Roman troop movement is anticipated. Every Carthaginian flanking maneuver is countered before it can develop. Every combined operation is met by defensive preparations that suggest alliance commanders knew about the attack before Roman and Carthaginian generals finished planning it. The explanation is both simple and terrifying. The alliance's economic integration strategy has created intelligence networks that penetrate every level of Roman and Carthaginian society. Roman soldiers are carrying supplies purchased from alliance merchants. Carthaginian ships are using navigation equipment acquired through alliance trade routes. The very economic systems that keep Roman and Carthaginian armies functioning have been compromised by alliance commercial penetration. Roman military couriers carrying strategic communications are using roads where every inn and way station is operated by alliance sympathizers. Carthaginian naval communications pass through ports where harbour masters have been recruited by alliance intelligence services. The Mediterranean commercial networks that both powers depend on for logistics have been systematically infiltrated over the past 5 years. This intelligence penetration allows alliance forces to fight what amounts to a perfect defensive campaign. They know where attacks are coming from, when they're coming, and in what strength. They can position forces to exploit terrain advantages while avoiding engagements where numerical superiority might be decisive. Roman and Carthaginian casualties mount at horrific rates while alliance losses remain minimal. Traditional Mediterranean tactical approaches that have dominated ancient warfare for centuries prove completely ineffective against enemies who can anticipate and counter every possible move. The breaking point comes when Roman and Carthaginian commanders receive simultaneous messages informing them that their respective capitals have fallen to alliance forces. The armies that were supposed to be defending Mediterranean civilization have been trapped on an island while their homelands were conquered by enemies they never saw coming. The psychological impact is crushing. Roman legionnaires who joined the army to defend Rome discover that Rome no longer exists as an independent power. Carthaginian mercenaries fighting for Carthaginian gold learn that Carthage can no longer pay them because Carthaginian territory is now controlled by alliance administrators. Mass desertions begin immediately. Why continue fighting for governments that no longer control their own territories? Why risk death defending rulers who have already been replaced by more competent administrators? Why maintain loyalty to systems that have proven inferior to alliance alternatives? The remaining Roman and Carthaginian forces in Sicily find themselves facing a choice that no Mediterranean army has ever confronted. Surrender to enemies who will offer them better lives than their own governments ever provided, or continue fighting for political systems that have already been proven obsolete. Most choose surrender, but it's not the kind of abject capitulation that ends traditional ancient wars. It's more like a job interview process where experienced Mediterranean soldiers apply for positions in alliance military forces that offer superior pay, better working conditions, and opportunities for advancement that Roman and Carthaginian systems never considered providing. Roman centurions who expected to die defending the honour of Rome instead find themselves offered officer positions in alliance expeditionary forces that will carry Maurya and Gupta military innovations to new territories. Carthaginian naval commanders discover that their expertise is desperately needed for alliance operations in Atlantic waters that Indian Ocean navigators have never explored. The integration process is so smooth and beneficial for individual soldiers that resistance essentially evaporates. Within months, former Roman and Carthaginian military personnel are serving as advisors, translators, and tactical specialists in alliance forces that are preparing for the next phase of expansion. By 308 BCE, just 1 year after the Sicilian Gambit, the Mediterranean world has been fundamentally transformed. Rome and Carthage no longer exist as independent powers. Their territories have been integrated into alliance administrative systems that provide better governance than traditional Mediterranean approaches. Their populations are more prosperous under alliance rule than they ever were under their original governments. But the real transformation goes deeper than political conquest. The alliance has demonstrated that their integrated military-commercial model can successfully absorb and improve upon the best aspects of Mediterranean civilization, while discarding the inefficiencies and contradictions that made traditional Roman and Carthaginian systems ultimately unsustainable. Roman engineering techniques are integrated with Mauryan construction methods to create infrastructure projects that surpass anything either civilization could have accomplished independently. Carthaginian navigation expertise is combined with Gupta maritime technology to create naval capabilities that can project power across oceans that were previously impassable. The knowledge synthesis works both ways. Alliance administrators learn from Roman legal frameworks and Carthaginian commercial practices, adapting the most effective elements to their own systems, while discarding approaches that don't align with alliance principles of sustainable expansion and population integration. This cultural and technological fusion creates something entirely new in human history. A truly transcontinental civilization that can coordinate complex operations across vast distances while maintaining local autonomy and cultural diversity. It's not just conquest, it's civilizational evolution on a scale that the ancient world has never witnessed. The implications extend far beyond the Mediterranean basin. Alliance control of Roman and Carthaginian territories provides access to Atlantic trade routes that connect Europe and Africa to the Americas. Gupta naval expertise, enhanced by Carthaginian navigation techniques, makes transatlantic exploration not just possible, but economically profitable. Alliance commercial networks that already stretch from India to Egypt now extend to Spain, Gaul, and the British Isles. For the first time in human history, a single political and economic system spans from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic, creating opportunities for trade, cultural exchange, and technological development that no previous civilization could have imagined. The speed of this transformation shocks contemporary observers. Within 5 years, the alliance has evolved from a regional power, controlling parts of the Indian Ocean, to a global hegemon that dominates 3 continents. Their success isn't just military, it's systemic. They've created a model of human organization that outperforms traditional approaches so dramatically that resistance becomes economically irrational. Former Roman territories that were chronically underdeveloped under Senate rule experience infrastructure improvements that transform local economies within months. Carthaginian colonies that were systematically exploited for resources become thriving commercial centers that generate wealth for local populations rather than extracting it for distant elites. The social transformations are equally dramatic. Alliance administrative systems that were developed for governing diverse Indian populations prove remarkably effective for managing the cultural complexity of the Mediterranean world. Roman citizens, Carthaginian colonists, Greek merchants, and African farmers all find places in alliance hierarchies that offer opportunities for advancement based on merit rather than birth or political connections. This meritocratic approach to governance creates loyalty that traditional Mediterranean systems could never achieve. Why support aristocratic Roman families who inherited their positions when you could serve alliance administrators who earned their authority through demonstrated competence? Why maintain allegiance to Carthaginian merchant princes who extracted wealth from your labour when you could participate in alliance commercial networks that share profits with contributors. The alliance's success in integrating Mediterranean populations isn't just administrative, it's philosophical. Traditional Roman and Carthaginian systems were based on hierarchical extraction. Wealth and power flowed upward from conquered populations to ruling elites. Alliance systems are based on networked integration. Wealth and power circulate throughout the system, creating incentives for everyone to contribute to collective success. This philosophical difference creates practical advantages that compound over time. Traditional Mediterranean territories were chronically unstable because exploitation generated resentment that periodically erupted into rebellion. Alliance territories become more stable over time because integration generates prosperity that creates stakeholders rather than subjects. Roman military analysts studying alliance governance methods realize they're witnessing something that challenges their fundamental understanding of how political power works. Traditional Roman approaches assume that fear and force are necessary to maintain order in diverse populations. Alliance methods demonstrate that prosperity and opportunity can create loyalty that makes coercion unnecessary. The economic implications are staggering. Alliance-controlled territories in the former Roman Empire generate tax revenues that dwarf what the Senate could ever extract through traditional tribute systems. More importantly, these revenues are generated through productive economic activity rather than exploitative taxation, creating sustainable wealth rather than consuming it. Carthaginian commercial networks that were limited to Mediterranean trade routes are now integrated into alliance systems that span continents. Former Carthaginian merchants who operated regional trading businesses find themselves managing commercial enterprises that connect markets from Britain to Bengal. The technological acceleration that results from this integration pushes human development forward by centuries. Roman concrete techniques combined with Mauryan metallurgy create construction capabilities that make massive infrastructure projects economically feasible. Carthaginian shipbuilding methods enhanced by Gupta navigation technology enable maritime expeditions that can cross oceans safely and profitably. Alliance scholars working in libraries that combine Roman texts, Carthaginian navigation charts, and Indian mathematical treatises make intellectual breakthroughs that individual civilizations could never have achieved in isolation. The synthesis of Mediterranean practical knowledge with Indian theoretical frameworks creates scientific advances that lay the groundwork for technological developments that won't occur in our timeline for another 1,000 years. By 305 BCE, just 15 years after the initial conquest of Egypt, the alliance has created something unprecedented in human history, a stable, prosperous, transcontinental civilization that spans from the Atlantic to the Pacific. Their success isn't just military or economic, it's civilizational. They've demonstrated that human societies can be organized in ways that generate wealth and stability while respecting cultural diversity and individual merit. The world that emerges from this transformation is so fundamentally different from traditional ancient civilization that it represents a new phase of human development. Political systems based on integration rather than extraction. Economic networks that generate prosperity rather than concentrating it. Military forces that protect and serve rather than conquer and exploit. But this transformation also creates new challenges and opportunities that will test the alliance's ability to manage success on an unprecedented scale. Because governing a transcontinental empire that includes hundreds of different cultures, languages, and traditions requires administrative innovations that no previous civilization has ever attempted. The question isn't whether the alliance can conquer the known world. They've already done that. The question is whether they can create institutions and systems that can sustain this level of integration and prosperity across generations. And that question leads us to the most fascinating aspect of this alternate history. What kind of world emerges when humanity's first truly global civilization begins to explore possibilities that extend beyond Earth itself? The Alliance's administrative revolution begins with what they call the Unity Through Diversity protocols, a system of governance so sophisticated that it makes traditional Roman provincial administration look like amateur hour. Picture this. Instead of imposing a single cultural model across their vast territories, the alliance creates what amounts to a federal system where local customs and traditions are preserved while being integrated into transcontinental networks of trade, communication, and mutual defense. Here's where it gets absolutely brilliant. The alliance doesn't try to make Romans stop being Roman or force Carthaginians to abandon their maritime traditions. Instead, they identify the most effective elements of each local culture and find ways to amplify those strengths through alliance resources and connections. Roman legal expertise becomes the foundation for alliance judicial systems. Carthaginian navigation knowledge guides alliance maritime expansion. Greek philosophical traditions inform alliance educational institutions, but they go far beyond simple cultural preservation. The alliance creates what we might recognize today as a merit-based civil service system that allows talented individuals from any background to advance through alliance hierarchies based on demonstrated ability rather than inherited status. A brilliant Roman engineer can find himself designing infrastructure projects that span from Spain to India. A gifted Carthaginian merchant might end up managing trade routes that connect dozens of cultures across 3 continents. This meritocratic approach creates something unprecedented in ancient history: genuine social mobility on a transcontinental scale. Traditional Mediterranean societies were rigidly stratified, with birth determining life opportunities. Alliance systems reward competence and innovation, creating incentives for individuals to develop their talents while contributing to collective prosperity. The psychological impact on populations throughout the former Roman and Carthaginian territories is transformative. People who spent their entire lives accepting that their social position was fixed suddenly discover opportunities for advancement that their grandparents could never have imagined. Farmers can become administrators, craftsmen can become engineers, merchants can become diplomats. This social transformation generates loyalty that traditional coercion-based systems could never achieve. Why rebel against a government that offers your children opportunities for education and advancement? Why resist rulers who invest in infrastructure that improves your daily life while respecting your cultural traditions? The Alliance's educational initiatives represent another revolutionary innovation. Drawing on Indian traditions of scholarly exchange and Mediterranean practices of technical training, they establish what amounts to the world's first international university system. Students from Britain can study mathematics in Alexandria, astronomy in Babylon, or navigation in Indian Ocean ports. These educational exchanges don't just spread knowledge, they create personal relationships that bind the alliance together at the human level. Young Romans studying engineering in Indian cities return home with friendships and professional connections that span continents. Carthaginian scholars working in alliance libraries develop loyalty to institutions that transcend their original tribal or national identities. The economic implications of this educational integration are staggering. Alliance territories benefit from constant knowledge transfer that accelerates technological development and innovation. Agricultural techniques developed in Indian river valleys improve crop yields in Egyptian fields and Italian farmlands. Metallurgical advances discovered in Spanish mines enhance weapons and tools production throughout alliance territories, but perhaps the most revolutionary aspect of alliance governance is their approach to religious and cultural diversity. Traditional ancient empires typically imposed their gods and customs on conquered populations, generating resentment and periodic rebellions. The alliance takes the opposite approach, treating cultural diversity as a strategic asset rather than a problem to be solved. Local religious traditions are not just tolerated, they're actively supported through alliance resources and protection. Roman gods continue to be worshipped in Roman territories, but now their temples are funded by alliance administrators who understand that cultural continuity generates political stability. Carthaginian religious practices are preserved and even exported to other alliance territories, where they prove popular with local populations. This religious tolerance creates unexpected synergies. Egyptian priests sharing astronomical knowledge with Indian scholars make discoveries that advance alliance navigation capabilities. Roman augurs working with Carthaginian soothsayers develop divination techniques that help alliance commanders make strategic decisions. Greek philosophers debating with Indian sages produce philosophical frameworks that inform alliance legal and administrative systems. The alliance's approach to military organization reflects this same integration philosophy. Rather than creating a monolithic army that imposes uniform tactics and equipment, they develop specialized military units that leverage the unique strengths of different cultural traditions. Roman discipline and engineering expertise create siege specialists who can reduce any fortification. Carthaginian naval experience produces marine units capable of amphibious operations in any ocean. Indian elephant cavalry provides shock troops that can break any enemy formation. These specialized military units train together regularly, creating combined arms capabilities that no traditional ancient army can match. Roman engineers working with Indian siege specialists can breach fortifications using techniques that neither culture could have developed independently. Carthaginian marines supported by Mauryan infantry can conduct amphibious assaults with precision that makes coastal defences obsolete. The integration extends to logistics and supply systems that represent another quantum leap in military organisation. Alliance armies don't just carry supplies, they carry entire economic ecosystems. Military expeditions include merchants, craftsmen, farmers, and administrators who can establish self-sustaining bases that generate resources rather than consuming them. This logistical revolution makes alliance military power essentially unlimited by traditional constraints. Ancient armies typically grew weaker as campaigns progressed because they consumed resources faster than they could acquire them through conquest or tribute. Alliance armies grow stronger over time because their integrated economic systems generate wealth and resources faster than military operations consume them. Roman military theorists studying alliance logistics realize they're witnessing the emergence of something that transcends traditional understanding of military power. This isn't just superior organization or better equipment, though both are certainly present. This is a fundamentally different relationship between military force and economic productivity that makes traditional warfare obsolete. The Alliance's naval expansion into Atlantic waters demonstrates the practical implications of this integrated approach. Using Carthaginian navigation expertise enhanced by Indian ocean sailing techniques, Alliance expeditions begin systematic exploration of Atlantic trade routes that connect Europe and Africa to previously unknown lands. These aren't just exploration missions, they're comprehensive colonization efforts that establish Alliance commercial and administrative systems in new territories. Alliance settlements in Atlantic islands and coastal regions become thriving commercial hubs within months of establishment, demonstrating that their integrated model can succeed in any geographic or cultural environment. The speed of Atlantic expansion shocks observers throughout the known world. Traditional colonization efforts require decades to establish sustainable settlements that can survive without constant support from home territories. Alliance colonies become self-sufficient within months, while generating surplus resources that support further expansion. This expansion capability creates strategic implications that extend far beyond immediate territorial gains. Alliance control of Atlantic trade routes provides access to resources and markets that no previous civilization has ever exploited. More crucially, it demonstrates that Alliance organizational methods can successfully integrate any population or territory, regardless of cultural or geographic differences. By 300 BCE, 20 years after the initial conquest of Egypt, the Alliance has created something that challenges every assumption about the limits of ancient political organization. Their territories span from the British Isles to the Bay of Bengal, connected by commercial networks that generate more wealth than all previous empires combined, while maintaining cultural diversity and local autonomy. The administrative systems that manage this transcontinental civilization represent innovations that won't appear in our timeline for more than a millennium. Standardized communication protocols allow rapid information transfer across vast distances. Integrated transportation networks move people and goods between continents with efficiency that makes distance almost irrelevant. Educational exchanges create shared knowledge bases that accelerate technological development throughout Alliance territories. But the Alliance's greatest achievement isn't territorial or economic, it's social. They've created the world's first truly meritocratic civilization, where talent and effort determine life outcomes rather than birth or political connections. This social mobility generates innovation and loyalty that traditional hierarchical systems could never achieve. The cultural renaissance that emerges from Alliance integration produces intellectual and artistic achievements that dwarf anything previous civilizations accomplished in isolation. Roman architectural techniques combined with Indian mathematical precision create monumental construction projects that seem almost supernatural to contemporary observers. Carthaginian maritime knowledge, enhanced by Gupta navigation expertise, enables oceanic expeditions that discover new continents and establish trade routes spanning the globe. Alliance scholars working in libraries that combine texts from dozens of cultures make scientific discoveries that accelerate human understanding by centuries. Mathematical concepts developed in Indian universities are applied to Roman engineering projects, creating structural capabilities that enable construction of buildings and infrastructure on previously impossible scales. The artistic fusion produces cultural works that reflect the full diversity of human creativity. Roman sculptors working with Indian metallurgists create bronze statues of unprecedented size and detail. Carthaginian musicians collaborating with Greek composers develop musical forms that incorporate rhythms and instruments from across the known world. Egyptian artists using pigments and techniques from Indian and Mediterranean traditions create visual art that captures the imagination of audiences throughout alliance territories. This cultural flowering isn't just aesthetic, it's strategic. Alliance artistic and intellectual achievements demonstrate the superiority of their integrated model to populations that might otherwise resist foreign rule. Why maintain loyalty to traditional rulers who suppress creativity when you could join a civilization that celebrates and rewards innovation? The Alliance's approach to technological development represents another revolutionary innovation. Rather than guarding technical secrets as strategic advantages, they actively share knowledge throughout their territories, understanding that collective advancement benefits everyone. Roman concrete techniques are taught to Indian engineers who adapt them for tropical construction conditions. Carthaginian shipbuilding methods are shared with Atlantic coastal populations who modify them for local sailing conditions. This open-source approach to technology creates innovation cascades that accelerate development throughout alliance territories. Improvements discovered in one region are rapidly disseminated to others where local conditions might suggest additional modifications or applications. The result is technological advancement that proceeds at rates that individual cultures could never achieve in isolation. The military implications of this technological sharing are staggering. Alliance armies equipped with weapons and equipment that incorporate the best innovations from dozens of cultures possess capabilities that make traditional Mediterranean military forces obsolete. Composite bows using Indian techniques and Mediterranean materials achieve ranges and accuracy that traditional weapons can't match. Siege engines combining Roman engineering with Indian metallurgy can breach fortifications that were previously impregnable. But the Alliance's most significant innovation isn't military or economic, it's philosophical. They've created a political system based on the radical idea that human diversity is a source of strength rather than a problem to be solved. Traditional ancient empires sought to impose uniformity on their subjects, viewing cultural differences as threats to stability. The Alliance treats diversity as a competitive advantage, understanding that different perspectives and approaches generate solutions that homogeneous systems can't achieve. This philosophical framework creates practical advantages that compound over time. Alliance administrators dealing with complex problems can draw on solutions developed by dozens of different cultures, increasing the likelihood of finding effective approaches. Alliance merchants operating in diverse markets understand local customs and preferences in ways that foreign traders never could. Alliance military commanders facing unfamiliar challenges can adapt tactics and strategies from multiple military traditions. The long-term implications of this diversity as strength philosophy extend far beyond immediate practical advantages. The Alliance is creating cultural precedents that will influence human social organization for millennia. The idea that different groups can maintain their distinct identities while participating in shared institutions represents a revolutionary approach to managing complex societies. By 295 BCE, the Alliance has established trade relationships that extend beyond the Atlantic to lands that won't appear on European maps for another 1,000 years in our timeline. Alliance navigators using enhanced Carthaginian and Indian techniques have discovered sea routes that connect the Mediterranean world to previously unknown continents, establishing commercial networks that span the globe. These transcontinental trade relationships generate wealth on scales that ancient civilizations never imagined possible. Alliance territories benefit from access to resources and markets that no previous empire could exploit. More importantly, these trade networks create economic incentives for maintaining peaceful relationships between distant cultures, reducing the likelihood of conflicts that could disrupt Alliance prosperity. The Alliance's global reach creates opportunities for cultural and intellectual exchange that accelerate human development in ways that isolated civilizations could never achieve. Mathematical concepts developed in Indian universities are applied to engineering projects in Britain. Agricultural techniques perfected in Egyptian fields improve crop yields in Atlantic coastal settlements. Navigation methods refined through Indian Ocean exploration enable safe passage across previously unknown seas. This global knowledge network creates feedback loops that generate innovation at unprecedented rates. Problems identified in one region of the alliance can be solved using expertise developed in completely different cultural and geographic contexts. Solutions that work in one environment can be adapted for use in others, creating continuous improvement cycles that benefit the entire alliance. The alliance's success in managing this global civilization demonstrates that human societies can achieve levels of integration and cooperation that traditional political theories assumed were impossible. Their administrative systems prove that cultural diversity and political unity can coexist in ways that strengthen both local communities and transcontinental institutions. But this success also creates new challenges that will test the alliance's ability to adapt and evolve. Managing a civilization that spans continents and includes hundreds of different cultures requires constant innovation in governance, communication, and resource allocation. The alliance must continuously develop new methods for maintaining cohesion while respecting diversity, ensuring prosperity while preventing exploitation, and promoting growth while maintaining sustainability. The solutions they develop to these challenges will determine whether their transcontinental civilization can endure across generations or whether it will collapse under the weight of its own success. Because the alliance has achieved something unprecedented in human history, they've created a global civilization that works. The question now is whether they can maintain and improve it, or whether the very success that brought them to power will ultimately prove to be their downfall. The stage is set for the next phase of this alternate history, where the alliance must confront challenges that no previous civilization has ever faced. Because when you've conquered the known world and created prosperity across 3 continents, the only remaining frontier is the unknown itself, and that frontier holds possibilities that will test every assumption about what human civilization can achieve. The Alliance's expansion into uncharted Atlantic waters reveals capabilities that make their Mediterranean conquest look like mere practice exercises. By 290 BCE, Alliance expeditions have established permanent settlements on land masses that exist beyond the edge of every known map, creating commercial networks that generate wealth from resources no Mediterranean civilization ever imagined existed. Picture this: Alliance navigators, combining Carthaginian deep-water sailing techniques with Indian Ocean monsoon knowledge, have mastered Atlantic wind patterns in ways that make transoceanic voyages as routine as Mediterranean coastal trading. Their ships, built using hybrid designs that incorporate Roman engineering precision with Gupta maritime innovations, can carry larger cargo loads across greater distances than any vessel in recorded history. But here's what makes these Atlantic expeditions absolutely revolutionary. They're not just exploration missions. They're comprehensive colonization operations that establish fully functional Alliance administrative systems in territories thousands of miles from their nearest support bases. These settlements become self-sustaining economic powerhouses within months, generating surplus resources while serving as staging areas for further expansion. The indigenous populations they encounter in these Atlantic territories face something unprecedented in human contact history. Traditional ancient colonization involved conquest, exploitation, and cultural destruction. The Alliance offers something completely different: partnership in the most prosperous commercial network the world has ever seen. Native Atlantic coastal peoples who have never seen metal tools suddenly find themselves offered training in Alliance metallurgical techniques. Hunter-gatherer societies that have lived at subsistence levels for generations discover agricultural methods that can support much larger populations while requiring less labor. Isolated tribal groups gain access to Alliance educational systems that provide opportunities their ancestors never dreamed possible. The integration process works both ways. Alliance administrators learn navigation techniques from Atlantic peoples who understand local coastal conditions in ways that foreign explorers never could. Indigenous knowledge of local plants and animals enhances Alliance agricultural and medical capabilities. Traditional hunting and fishing methods are adapted for use in Alliance commercial operations. This mutual benefit approach creates loyalty that makes traditional colonial resistance movements essentially impossible. Why fight against colonizers who make your life better while respecting your cultural traditions? Why resist foreign rule when that rule provides opportunities for advancement that your traditional social systems never offered? The economic implications of Atlantic expansion are staggering. Alliance territories now control trade routes that span from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic, creating commercial opportunities that generate wealth faster than traditional ancient economies could even calculate. Raw materials from Atlantic settlements flow eastward to Alliance manufacturing centers, while finished goods and luxury items move westward to new markets. But the alliance's Atlantic success reveals something even more significant. Their organizational model can successfully integrate any human population, regardless of cultural background or technological development level. The same administrative systems that transformed Mediterranean city-states work equally well with Atlantic tribal societies. This universality suggests that alliance governance methods represent something fundamentally different from traditional ancient political systems. They're not just better tactics or superior organization, they're a new phase of human social evolution that can adapt to any cultural or geographic environment. The military implications of Atlantic expansion become clear when alliance expeditions encounter their first serious resistance from organized indigenous confederations. These conflicts reveal that alliance military capabilities have evolved far beyond what they demonstrated against Roman and Carthaginian forces. Alliance armies operating in Atlantic territories don't just defeat enemy forces, they do so using combined arms tactics that integrate weapons and techniques from dozens of different cultures. War elephants trained for Atlantic coastal conditions work alongside Roman siege specialists and Carthaginian marine units. Indian archery techniques are adapted for Atlantic forest warfare, while Mediterranean cavalry tactics are modified for open plains combat. The speed and efficiency of these Atlantic campaigns shock alliance commanders themselves. Military operations that they expected would require years of careful preparation are completed in months. Fortifications that should have withstood siege for seasons fall within days. Enemy forces that should have provided determined resistance collapse after brief engagements. The explanation lies in the alliance's accumulated military experience. By 290 BCE, alliance armies have absorbed tactical knowledge from every major military tradition in the known world. Their officers include former Roman centurions, Carthaginian naval commanders, Greek phalanx specialists, and Indian elephant cavalry veterans. This combined expertise creates military capabilities that no traditional ancient force can match. But the Alliance's greatest Atlantic achievement isn't military conquest. It's the establishment of transcontinental communication networks that connect settlements separated by vast oceanic distances. Using enhanced versions of Indian relay systems combined with Mediterranean signal techniques, Alliance administrators can coordinate operations across distances that should make central management impossible. Messages that would take months to transmit using traditional ancient methods reach their destinations in weeks. Strategic decisions made in Egyptian administrative centers can be implemented in Atlantic settlements faster than traditional empires could manage communication within single provinces. This communication capability allows the Alliance to maintain coherent policies across their global territories while adapting to local conditions. The technological innovations required to support Atlantic operations accelerate Alliance development in ways that benefit all their territories. Shipbuilding techniques developed for Atlantic voyages improve maritime capabilities throughout Alliance waters. Navigation methods refined through Atlantic exploration enhance commercial operations in Indian Ocean and Mediterranean routes. Agricultural techniques adapted for Atlantic climates prove useful in other Alliance territories with similar environmental conditions. Metallurgical innovations required for Atlantic colonization improve weapons and tools production throughout the Alliance. Construction methods developed for Atlantic settlements are applied to infrastructure projects across Alliance territories. This technological cross-pollination creates innovation cycles that generate advancement at unprecedented rates. Solutions developed for specific Atlantic challenges find applications in completely different contexts. Improvements discovered through Atlantic operations enhance Alliance capabilities in ways that compound over time. The cultural impact of Atlantic expansion produces another renaissance that dwarfs even the achievements of Mediterranean integration. Alliance scholars now have access to knowledge systems from cultures that developed in complete isolation from Old World traditions. Mathematical concepts, artistic techniques, and philosophical frameworks that emerged independently in Atlantic societies provide new perspectives that revolutionize Alliance intellectual development. The synthesis of Atlantic indigenous knowledge with Alliance scholarly traditions creates breakthroughs that push human understanding forward by centuries. Astronomical observations made by Atlantic peoples enhance Alliance navigation capabilities. Medical knowledge developed through Atlantic healing traditions improves Alliance healthcare systems. Architectural techniques adapted from Atlantic construction methods enable Alliance engineers to build in environmental conditions they previously couldn't handle. But perhaps the most significant aspect of Atlantic expansion is what it reveals about the alliance's long-term sustainability. Traditional ancient empires collapsed when they reached the limits of their expansion capabilities. The alliance demonstrates that their organizational model becomes stronger as it grows, generating resources and capabilities that enable further expansion. Atlantic territories don't drain alliance resources the way traditional colonies would. Instead, they contribute to alliance prosperity while providing bases for operations that extend alliance reach even further. The economic networks that connect Atlantic settlements to alliance heartlands generate wealth that supports continued expansion, while improving living conditions throughout alliance territories. This self-reinforcing expansion model suggests that the alliance has transcended traditional limitations on ancient imperial growth. They've created a civilization that can continue expanding indefinitely, because each new territory strengthens the whole rather than weakening it through resource drain. The administrative innovations required to manage Atlantic territories push alliance governance systems to new levels of sophistication. Managing populations separated by oceanic distances requires communication protocols, resource allocation systems, and conflict resolution mechanisms that no previous civilization ever attempted. The solutions they develop establish precedents that will influence human political organization for millennia. Federal systems that balance central authority with local autonomy. Merit-based advancement opportunities that transcend cultural boundaries. Economic integration that generates prosperity while respecting diversity. These Atlantic governance innovations prove that alliance administrative methods can scale to any level of complexity. The same principles that work for managing Mediterranean city-states adapt successfully to coordinating transcontinental operations. The same cultural integration techniques that transformed Roman and Carthaginian territories work equally well with Atlantic indigenous societies. By 285 BCE, 35 years after the initial conquest of Egypt, the alliance has achieved something that challenges every assumption about ancient political possibilities. They control territories that span multiple continents, connected by commercial networks that generate unprecedented prosperity while maintaining cultural diversity and individual opportunity. Their Atlantic success demonstrates that human societies can achieve levels of integration and cooperation that traditional theories assumed were impossible. Different cultures can maintain their distinct identities while participating in shared institutions. Local autonomy and central coordination can coexist in ways that strengthen both community traditions and transcontinental networks. The Alliance's global civilization represents a new phase of human development that transcends traditional ancient limitations. They've proven that expansion doesn't require exploitation, that prosperity doesn't require cultural uniformity, and that political unity doesn't require oppression. But this success also creates challenges that will test every aspect of alliance organization. Managing a global civilization requires constant innovation in governance, communication, and resource management. The alliance must continuously develop new methods for maintaining cohesion while promoting growth, ensuring stability while encouraging adaptation. The solutions they create will determine whether their transcontinental civilization can endure across generations, or whether success itself will create problems that their organizational model can't solve. Because the alliance has achieved something unprecedented, they've created a sustainable global civilization that works. The question now is whether they can maintain and improve this achievement, or whether the very capabilities that brought them to global dominance will ultimately create challenges that exceed even their remarkable adaptive capacity. The next phase of their development will determine not just the fate of their own civilization, but the entire trajectory of human social evolution. The Alliance stands at a crossroads that no civilization in history has ever faced. They've conquered the known world and discovered unknown continents. They've created prosperity across multiple cultures and established administrative systems that span oceanic distances. They've proven that human diversity can be a source of strength rather than division. What they do next will determine whether humanity's first global civilization becomes a permanent achievement or a cautionary tale about the limits of even the most successful expansion. The stage is set for developments that will test every assumption about what human societies can accomplish when they transcend traditional boundaries and embrace possibilities that previous generations never imagined. The Alliance's next challenge isn't territorial expansion or military conquest. It's something far more complex and potentially more dangerous: managing success on a scale that no human organization has ever attempted. Because when you've achieved everything that traditional ancient civilizations considered impossible, The only remaining question is what comes next. The alliance's transcontinental success creates an entirely new category of problem that no ancient civilization has ever confronted. What happens when your organizational model becomes so effective that it outgrows every traditional framework for understanding political power? By 280 BCE, alliance administrators are grappling with challenges that exist beyond the scope of conventional ancient governance. Picture this scenario. Alliance territories now generate so much wealth that traditional methods of resource allocation become obsolete. Egyptian gold mines, Iberian silver deposits, Atlantic timber resources, and Indian spice networks are producing surplus revenues that exceed the storage and management capabilities of existing financial systems. Alliance administrators face the unprecedented challenge of managing prosperity on a scale that threatens to overwhelm their institutional capacity. But here's where the alliance's adaptive genius reveals itself once again. Rather than trying to centralize this massive wealth flow through traditional treasury systems, they develop what amounts to the world's first distributed economic network. Resources are allocated through regional hubs that can respond to local needs while maintaining connection to transcontinental priorities. This distributed wealth management creates economic resilience that traditional ancient systems could never achieve. When one region experiences natural disasters or temporary disruptions, resources can be rapidly redirected from other areas without destabilizing the entire system. Alliance territories become economically interdependent in ways that create mutual support rather than competitive rivalry. The administrative innovations required to manage this distributed economy push alliance governance into completely uncharted territory. They develop communication protocols that can coordinate resource flows across oceanic distances. They create standardized measurement systems that allow accurate accounting across cultures with completely different numerical traditions. They establish conflict resolution mechanisms that can handle disputes between regions, separated by thousands of miles. These innovations represent quantum leaps in human organizational capability. Alliance administrators are essentially inventing modern concepts of federal governance, international commerce, and global resource management using ancient technologies and philosophical frameworks. The solutions they create won't appear in our timeline for more than a millennium. But the Alliance's greatest innovation during this period isn't administrative or economic, it's educational. Recognizing that managing a global civilization requires knowledge and skills that no single culture possesses, they establish what amounts to humanity's first truly international university system. Alliance educational institutions don't just preserve and transmit existing knowledge. They actively synthesize information from dozens of different cultural traditions, creating new fields of study that emerge from cross-cultural intellectual exchange. Roman legal principles combined with Indian philosophical frameworks produce jurisprudence systems that can handle disputes across cultural boundaries. Carthaginian navigation techniques enhanced by Atlantic indigenous knowledge create exploration capabilities that can safely traverse previously unknown waters. The intellectual renaissance that emerges from these educational exchanges transforms human understanding in ways that individual cultures could never achieve in isolation. Mathematical concepts developed through Indo-Mediterranean collaboration solve engineering problems that enable construction projects of unprecedented scale and complexity. Astronomical observations combining traditions from multiple continents produce navigation systems that make global travel routine rather than extraordinary. Alliance scholars working in these international institutions make discoveries that accelerate technological development by centuries. Metallurgical techniques that synthesize knowledge from European, African, and American traditions create alloys and tools that surpass anything previous civilizations produced. Agricultural methods that integrate approaches from multiple climate zones enable alliance territories to support much larger populations while improving rather than depleting soil quality. But perhaps the most significant educational innovation is the alliance's approach to cultural preservation and transmission. Rather than allowing global integration to homogenize local traditions, they develop systems that actively maintain cultural diversity while facilitating cross-cultural communication and cooperation. Young Romans studying in Indian institutions learn Sanskrit and Hindu philosophy while maintaining their Latin literacy and Roman legal training. Carthaginian students working in Egyptian schools master hieroglyphic writing and Egyptian engineering while preserving their Phoenician maritime traditions. Atlantic indigenous scholars studying in Mediterranean academies acquire Greek mathematical knowledge while contributing their own, astronomical observations and ecological understanding, this educational approach creates something unprecedented in human history. A global intellectual community that can draw on the full spectrum of human cultural achievement while maintaining the distinct perspectives that make different traditions valuable. Alliance scholars aren't becoming culturally homogeneous, they're becoming culturally multilingual. The practical implications of this cultural multilingualism are staggering. Alliance administrators dealing with complex problems can approach them from multiple cultural perspectives simultaneously, increasing the likelihood of finding effective solutions. Alliance merchants operating in diverse markets understand local customs and preferences with depth that enables unprecedented commercial success. Alliance military commanders facing unfamiliar challenges can adapt tactics from multiple martial traditions. But the Alliance's educational success also creates challenges that test their organizational flexibility. Educated populations are more capable of independent thought and action, which can create political complexities that traditional authoritarian systems handle through suppression. The Alliance must develop governance methods that channel educated initiative toward constructive purposes while maintaining institutional coherence. Their solution represents another revolutionary innovation: participatory governance systems that allow educated citizens from all cultural backgrounds to contribute to policy development and implementation. Alliance administrative councils include representatives from every major cultural tradition within their territories, creating decision-making processes that benefit from diverse perspectives while maintaining practical effectiveness. This participatory approach generates loyalty and engagement that traditional top-down systems could never achieve. Citizens who participate in governance decisions become stakeholders in Alliance success, rather than subjects of Alliance authority. Regional communities that contribute to policy development feel ownership of Alliance institutions rather than resentment toward foreign rule. The military implications of Alliance educational success become apparent when they face their first serious external threat since the conquest of Rome and Carthage. Nomadic confederations from beyond Alliance borders, motivated by tales of Alliance wealth and territorial expansion, begin organizing coalition forces designed to challenge Alliance dominance through traditional ancient warfare methods. These external threats provide the first test of Alliance military capabilities since their global expansion began. The results demonstrate that Alliance educational investments have created military advantages that traditional ancient armies simply cannot match. Alliance commanders facing nomadic coalition forces don't just rely on superior weapons or tactics, though both are certainly present. They employ strategic thinking that draws on military traditions from dozens of different cultures, creating approaches that nomadic leaders have never encountered and cannot effectively counter. Nomadic cavalry charges that should overwhelm Alliance infantry formations instead encounter defensive preparations that combine Roman engineering with Indian anti-cavalry techniques and Atlantic forest fighting methods. Traditional nomadic archery that should provide decisive range superiority faces Alliance composite bow technology that achieves greater range and accuracy while being supported by coordinated infantry maneuvers that protect archers from cavalry attacks. But the most devastating aspect of Alliance military response isn't tactical superiority, it's strategic depth. Nomadic confederations expect to face localized Alliance forces that can be defeated through concentrated attacks on specific targets. Instead, they encounter military systems that can coordinate responses across transcontinental distances while drawing on resources from multiple continents simultaneously. Alliance armies operating against nomadic threats aren't limited to local recruitment and supply. They can call on reinforcements from territories thousands of miles away, while accessing specialized equipment and expertise from wherever it's most readily available. Roman siege engineers can be deployed to Atlantic battlefields. Indian elephant cavalry can support Mediterranean operations. Carthaginian naval forces can provide logistics support for land campaigns in completely different geographic regions. This strategic flexibility creates military capabilities that nomadic confederations cannot match through traditional ancient warfare methods. Alliance commanders can adapt their responses to specific nomadic tactics, while drawing on military knowledge from every culture within Alliance territories. Nomadic leaders find themselves facing enemies who seem to anticipate their every move, while employing countermeasures they've never encountered. The psychological impact on nomadic forces is crushing. Traditional nomadic military advantages, mobility, knowledge of local terrain, ability to disappear when facing superior forces, become irrelevant when facing enemies who possess superior mobility, better geographic knowledge, and the ability to pursue retreating forces across vast distances. Alliance victories against nomadic confederations demonstrate that their military capabilities have evolved far beyond what they possessed during Mediterranean conquests. These aren't just better equipped armies using improved tactics. These are military organizations that represent a fundamentally different approach to warfare, one that integrates capabilities from multiple cultures while drawing on resources from multiple continents. The speed and completeness of alliance victories shock observers throughout the known world. Nomadic confederations that should have provided serious challenges to alliance expansion are defeated so decisively that other potential enemies reconsider any thoughts of resistance. Alliance military reputation becomes so formidable that many external groups seek alliance membership rather than risk military confrontation. But alliance success against external threats also reveals internal challenges that require constant attention and innovation. Managing a global civilization that includes hundreds of different cultures requires continuous adaptation of governance systems, communication protocols, and resource allocation methods. The alliance must constantly balance competing interests between different regions while maintaining overall institutional coherence. They must ensure that rapid expansion doesn't create administrative gaps that could be exploited by internal dissidents or external enemies. They must manage cultural integration in ways that preserve diversity while preventing fragmentation. These challenges push alliance administrative systems to new levels of sophistication. They develop governance methods that can handle complex multi-party negotiations across oceanic distances. They create communication networks that can maintain accurate information flow between cultures with completely different linguistic and conceptual frameworks. They establish resource allocation systems that can respond to local needs while supporting transcontinental strategic objectives. The solutions they develop establish precedents that will influence human political organization for millennia. Federal systems that balance unity with diversity. Merit-based advancement that transcends cultural boundaries. Economic integration that generates prosperity while respecting local traditions. By 275 BCE, 45 years after the initial conquest of Egypt, the alliance has created something that transcends every category of ancient political achievement. They've established sustainable governance systems that span multiple continents while maintaining cultural diversity and individual opportunity. They've developed economic networks that generate unprecedented prosperity while supporting continued expansion. They've created military capabilities that can defend their territories while integrating new populations through attraction rather than coercion. Their success demonstrates that human societies can achieve levels of integration and cooperation that traditional ancient theories assumed were impossible. Different cultures can maintain their distinct identities while participating in shared institutions that benefit everyone. Local autonomy and central coordination can coexist in ways that strengthen both community traditions and transcontinental networks. But the alliance's greatest achievement isn't territorial, economic, or military, it's philosophical. They've proven that human diversity is a source of strength rather than division, that prosperity can be shared rather than hoarded, and that political systems can be designed to serve people rather than exploit them. This philosophical revolution creates cultural precedents that will influence human social development long after the alliance itself passes into history. The idea that different groups can cooperate for mutual benefit while maintaining their distinct identities represents a fundamental shift in human political thinking. The alliance's success also creates new possibilities that extend beyond traditional concepts of ancient achievement. Their global reach and technological capabilities position them to explore opportunities that no previous civilization could have imagined. Transcontinental trade networks generate wealth that can support projects of unprecedented scale and ambition. Educational exchanges create knowledge synthesis that accelerates innovation beyond anything individual cultures could achieve. Advanced navigation techniques developed through Atlantic exploration enable alliance expeditions to venture into oceanic regions that remain completely unknown to traditional ancient civilizations. Enhanced metallurgical capabilities allow construction of monuments and infrastructure that dwarf anything in recorded history. Improved agricultural methods support population growth that provides human resources for projects that previous civilizations couldn't even conceptualize. The alliance stands at the threshold of possibilities that transcend traditional ancient limitations. They've created a global civilization that works, established governance systems that can adapt to any challenge, and developed capabilities that can support achievements beyond anything previous human societies attempted. What they choose to do with these capabilities will determine not just their own fate, but the entire trajectory of human development, because the Alliance has reached a point where traditional concepts of success and failure no longer apply. They've achieved everything that ancient civilizations considered possible, and now they face the ultimate question: what lies beyond the boundaries of the possible itself? The Alliance's response to this question will test every aspect of their organizational genius, while potentially opening pathways to achievements that could reshape human understanding of what civilization can accomplish. They've proven that cooperation can triumph over conflict, that diversity can create strength, and that human societies can transcend traditional limitations when they embrace possibilities that previous generations never dared to imagine. The stage is set for developments that will challenge every assumption about ancient capabilities, while potentially creating precedents that influence human achievement for thousands of years. Because when you've accomplished the impossible, the only remaining frontier is the unimaginable itself. The Alliance's answer to the question of what lies beyond the possible comes in the form of something so audacious that even their own administrators initially dismiss it as fantasy: the Great Project, a transcontinental infrastructure initiative that will connect every Alliance territory through a network of roads, canals, and communication systems that makes distance essentially irrelevant. Picture this: engineers drawing on Roman concrete techniques, Indian metallurgy, and Atlantic indigenous knowledge of working with local materials begin construction of highways that can support heavy traffic across thousands of miles of varied terrain. These aren't just roads, they're engineered transportation corridors that include way stations, supply depots, and communication relay points positioned at precisely calculated intervals. But here's where the Alliance's vision becomes truly revolutionary. These transportation corridors aren't designed just for moving goods and people. They're designed to move ideas, knowledge, and cultural innovations at speeds that make intellectual exchange between distant territories as routine as local conversations. The engineering challenges alone should make this project impossible. Building roads across mountain ranges, through deserts, and over rivers using ancient technology requires solving problems that no previous civilization ever attempted. Traditional ancient engineering assumes that major construction projects are limited to single geographic regions with relatively uniform conditions. The Alliance's engineers approach these challenges by treating each obstacle as an opportunity to synthesize knowledge from multiple cultural traditions. Mountain passes that seem impossible to traverse become showcases for Roman engineering precision, combined with Indian understanding of high-altitude construction and Atlantic indigenous techniques for working with difficult terrain. Desert crossings that should defeat any ancient construction effort become demonstrations of Egyptian water management, combined with nomadic knowledge of desert survival and Alliance innovations in long-distance supply logistics. River crossings that should require decades of planning and construction are completed in months using hybrid bridge-building techniques that incorporate the best elements from every culture within Alliance territories. The speed of construction shocks even Alliance administrators who authorized the project. Work crews that should require years to complete major segments are finishing them in months. Engineering problems that should demand extensive research and experimentation are solved almost immediately by teams that can draw on technical knowledge from dozens of different traditions. The explanation lies in the Alliance's accumulated expertise and their revolutionary approach to knowledge sharing. By 270 BCE, Alliance engineering teams include specialists who have absorbed construction techniques from every major culture within their territories. Roman engineers who understand Mediterranean coastal conditions work alongside Indian specialists who know mountain construction, and Atlantic indigenous experts who understand forest engineering. This knowledge synthesis creates problem-solving capabilities that individual cultures could never achieve. Engineering challenges that would stump traditional Roman construction teams are easily handled by Alliance groups that can apply Indian mathematical precision and Atlantic material sciences to Roman structural principles. But the Great Project's most impressive innovation isn't engineering, it's organizational. Coordinating construction across multiple continents requires logistics management on a scale that no ancient civilization ever attempted. Work crews, materials, and equipment must be positioned at precise locations and times across distances that should make central coordination impossible. The Alliance solves this challenge through administrative innovations that represent quantum leaps in human organizational capability. They develop project management systems that can track thousands of simultaneous construction operations, while maintaining quality control standards that ensure consistency across vast geographic regions. Communication networks established for the Great Project become models for information transfer that will influence human administrative development for centuries. Messages can travel from Atlantic coastal work sites to Indian Ocean administrative centers faster than traditional ancient empires could manage communication within single provinces. The economic implications of Great Project construction are staggering. Rather than draining Alliance resources the way traditional ancient construction projects would, the transportation network generates wealth faster than it consumes resources. Each completed segment immediately begins facilitating trade and cultural exchange that produces revenues exceeding construction costs. Alliance territories connected by Great Project corridors experience economic booms that dwarf anything in recorded history. Goods that previously took months to transport between distant regions can now move in weeks. Cultural exchanges that were limited by travel difficulties become routine interactions between communities separated by thousands of miles. But the project's greatest impact isn't economic, it's social. The transportation network creates opportunities for personal mobility that no ancient civilization ever provided. A talented individual from Atlantic coastal settlements can pursue educational opportunities in Indian universities. A Roman engineer can apply their skills to construction projects in Egyptian territories. A Carthaginian merchant can establish trading relationships with communities across multiple continents. This personal mobility generates innovation and cultural synthesis at unprecedented rates. Ideas developed in one region of the Alliance can be rapidly transmitted to others, where different cultural perspectives might suggest improvements or alternative applications. Technical innovations discovered through local problem-solving become available throughout Alliance territories within months rather than generations. The Great Project also serves crucial strategic purposes that enhance Alliance security and expansion capabilities. The transportation network allows rapid deployment of military forces to any threatened region, while enabling quick response to external challenges or internal disruptions. Alliance armies can now move between continents faster than traditional ancient forces could travel between neighbouring provinces. Military supplies and equipment can be positioned in advance of potential conflicts, while specialised units can be deployed to wherever their particular expertise is most needed. This strategic mobility creates military advantages that make Alliance territories essentially unassailable through traditional ancient warfare methods. External enemies contemplating attacks on Alliance regions must consider the possibility of facing not just local defenders, but coordinated responses from Alliance forces throughout their global territories. The psychological impact on potential enemies is devastating. Why risk military confrontation with powers that can deploy resources from multiple continents, while offering opportunities for prosperity through peaceful cooperation? The Great Project doesn't just enhance Alliance military capabilities, it makes military resistance seem economically irrational. But the project's construction also reveals new challenges that test Alliance adaptive capacity. Managing construction across multiple continents requires constant innovation in engineering techniques, resource allocation, and quality control. Different geographic regions present unique problems that demand specialized solutions while maintaining overall project coherence. The Alliance responds to these challenges by treating them as opportunities for further knowledge synthesis and institutional development. Engineering problems encountered in one region become learning experiences that improve construction techniques throughout the project. Administrative challenges discovered during early construction phases inform improvements that enhance efficiency in later segments. This continuous adaptation approach creates organizational learning systems that make the Alliance stronger and more capable with each challenge they encounter. Rather than being weakened by the complexity of managing transcontinental construction, they develop capabilities that position them for even more ambitious future projects. By 265 BCE, 55 years after the initial conquest of Egypt, the Great Project nears completion with results that exceed even Alliance planners' most optimistic projections. The transportation network connects Alliance territories in ways that make transcontinental travel routine rather than extraordinary, while generating economic and cultural benefits that transform every region it touches. Alliance citizens can now travel from Atlantic coastal settlements to Indian Ocean ports using roads and way stations that provide comfortable accommodation and reliable supply. Merchants can transport goods across continents using standardized systems that eliminate most traditional barriers to long-distance trade. Scholars can pursue educational opportunities anywhere within alliance territories without facing the isolation and communication difficulties that limited ancient intellectual exchange. The cultural renaissance that emerges from great project completion produces achievements that dwarf even the remarkable intellectual developments of earlier alliance periods. Scholars who can easily travel between different cultural centers make discoveries that synthesize knowledge from traditions that previously had minimal contact. Mathematical concepts developed through Indo-Mediterranean collaboration are enhanced by Atlantic indigenous numerical systems that provide new approaches to complex calculations. Astronomical observations combining knowledge from multiple continents produce navigation techniques that make oceanic exploration safer and more profitable than coastal trading. Agricultural innovations that integrate methods from different climate zones enable alliance territories to support much larger populations while actually improving environmental conditions rather than depleting them. Architectural techniques that combine approaches from multiple building traditions create construction capabilities that can adapt to any geographic or climatic conditions. But perhaps the Great Project's most significant achievement is what it demonstrates about human potential when artificial barriers are removed. The Alliance has proven that distance, cultural differences, and resource limitations need not prevent cooperation and mutual benefit. Their transportation network shows that human societies can create infrastructure that serves everyone, rather than benefiting only privileged elites. The Alliance's success with the Great Project establishes precedents that will influence human development for millennia. The idea that major infrastructure projects can generate wealth rather than consuming it represents a revolutionary approach to public investment. The demonstration that different cultures can cooperate on massive construction efforts while maintaining their distinct identities provides models for future international collaboration. More fundamentally, the Great Project proves that human societies can achieve goals that seem impossible when they focus on shared benefits rather than competitive advantage. The Alliance's transportation network succeeds because it's designed to serve everyone within their territories rather than extracting resources for distant rulers. This philosophy of infrastructure as public service rather than elite privilege creates economic and social benefits that compound over time. Alliance territories connected by the Great Project become more prosperous, more innovative, and more stable because everyone has incentives to maintain and improve the systems that benefit them. The project's completion also positions the Alliance for achievements that extend beyond traditional concepts of ancient possibility. Their enhanced transportation and communication capabilities enable coordination of projects on scales that no previous civilization could have imagined. Their accumulated knowledge and organizational experience provide foundations for innovations that could accelerate human development by centuries. The Alliance stands at another threshold, having proven that transcontinental infrastructure projects are not only possible but profitable. Their success with the Great Project demonstrates that human societies can overcome any logistical or engineering challenge when they combine diverse knowledge with shared commitment to mutual benefit. What they choose to do next will determine whether their transcontinental civilization becomes a permanent transformation of human potential, or simply an impressive but temporary achievement, because the Alliance has now developed capabilities that could support projects extending beyond Earth itself, opening possibilities that challenge every assumption about ancient limitations. The Great Project's success creates opportunities that no human civilization has ever possessed. Enhanced transportation networks that can move people and goods across continents, communication systems that can coordinate activities across oceanic distances, knowledge synthesis capabilities that can solve problems by drawing on the full spectrum of human cultural achievement. These capabilities position the Alliance to contemplate achievements that transcend traditional boundaries of ancient ambition. Their global reach, combined with their accumulated technical knowledge and organizational expertise, enables them to consider projects that could reshape human understanding of what civilization can accomplish. The question isn't whether the Alliance can continue expanding their influence and capabilities. They've proven that their organizational model becomes stronger rather than weaker as it grows. The question is whether they will choose to pursue possibilities that extend beyond traditional concepts of earthly achievement. Because the Alliance has reached a point where conventional measures of success become inadequate. They've created sustainable prosperity across multiple continents. They've established governance systems that can adapt to any challenge. They've developed technologies and organizational methods that surpass anything in recorded history. Their next decisions will determine not just their own future, but the entire trajectory of human civilization. The Alliance has proven that cooperation can triumph over conflict, that diversity can create strength, and that human societies can transcend traditional limitations when they embrace possibilities that previous generations never dared to imagine. The stage is set for developments that will test the ultimate boundaries of human achievement, while potentially creating precedents that influence the species for thousands of years. Because when you've accomplished everything that ancient civilizations considered possible, and proven that the impossible is merely difficult, the only remaining question is what lies beyond the boundaries of imagination itself. The Alliance's answer to that question is about to reshape human understanding of what it means to be a technological civilization. Their accumulated capabilities, combined with their philosophical commitment to shared benefit rather than elite exploitation, position them to pursue achievements that could establish humanity as something far greater than a merely planetary species. The transformation they're about to attempt will determine whether human civilization can transcend the limitations that have constrained every previous society, or whether even the most successful ancient achievements must ultimately yield to forces beyond their control. The Alliance stands ready to discover which of these possibilities represents humanity's true destiny. The Alliance's next move defies every assumption about ancient technological limitations. In 260 BCE, just as the Great Project reaches completion, Alliance scholars working in the expanded libraries of Alexandria make a discovery that will reshape human understanding of the cosmos itself. Deep within a collection of Babylonian astronomical tablets, recently acquired through Alliance trade networks, they uncover mathematical calculations that describe celestial mechanics with precision that shouldn't be possible for ancient civilizations. But here's where it gets absolutely mind-bending. These aren't just theoretical calculations. They're practical formulas for predicting planetary positions, solar eclipses, and stellar movements with accuracy that rivals what we might expect from Renaissance astronomers. The tablets describe observation techniques using instruments that no Mediterranean civilization has ever built, methods for measuring celestial distances that require mathematical concepts supposedly unknown to the ancient world. The implications hit Alliance administrators like a thunderbolt. If ancient Babylonian astronomers possess such advanced knowledge, what other secrets might be hidden in the vast archives they've accumulated from conquered territories? More crucially, could this knowledge be applied to projects that extend beyond traditional earthly concerns? Alliance scholars begin systematically examining astronomical records from every culture within their territories. Egyptian star charts reveal navigation techniques that could guide vessels across oceanic distances using celestial positioning methods of unprecedented precision. Indian mathematical treatises contain calculations for predicting tidal patterns and seasonal changes with accuracy that makes long-distance planning far more reliable than anyone thought possible. Roman engineering texts, when combined with these astronomical calculations, suggest construction possibilities that challenge fundamental assumptions about what ancient technology can achieve. Carthaginian navigation records, enhanced by Alliance mathematical techniques, describe ocean current patterns and wind systems that could support maritime expeditions to regions beyond the known world. But the real breakthrough comes when Alliance scholars realize that these separate knowledge traditions, when synthesized, describe something that individual cultures never attempted: systematic exploration and mapping of the entire planetary surface. The combined astronomical, mathematical, and engineering knowledge within Alliance territories provides all the tools necessary for global exploration on a scale that no ancient civilization ever imagined. Picture this revelation unfolding in the minds of Alliance administrators. They control territories spanning multiple continents, connected by transportation networks that make transcontinental coordination routine. They possess astronomical knowledge that can guide navigation across any oceanic distance. They have engineering capabilities that can establish settlements in any geographic or climatic conditions. They command resources that can support expeditions of unprecedented scale and duration. The logical conclusion is staggering. The Alliance possesses everything necessary to map and explore the entire planet Earth. Not just the known continents, but the vast oceanic regions that remain completely mysterious to ancient civilizations. They can discover and chart every landmass, every island chain, every coastal region that exists anywhere on the planetary surface. This realization transforms Alliance strategic thinking in ways that dwarf even their Mediterranean conquests. Traditional ancient civilizations focused on controlling specific territories or trade routes. The Alliance begins contemplating something unprecedented: comprehensive knowledge and potential control of the entire planetary environment. The project they develop makes the Great Project look like a local construction effort. Alliance planners envision systematic exploration fleets that will chart every ocean, map every continent, and establish settlements in every habitable region on Earth. These won't be random exploration missions, but coordinated scientific expeditions designed to create complete geographical and environmental knowledge of the planetary surface. The organizational challenges alone should make this impossible. Coordinating exploration fleets across multiple oceans while maintaining communication with terrestrial bases requires logistics capabilities that no ancient civilization ever attempted. The expeditions must be self-sufficient for years at a time while remaining connected to Alliance administrative networks that can provide strategic guidance and resource support. But the Alliance's accumulated organizational expertise makes even these challenges manageable. Their communication systems, refined through Great Project construction, can maintain contact with expeditions separated by oceanic distances. Their supply networks, developed for transcontinental coordination, can position resources at strategic locations throughout their planned exploration routes. More crucially, their integrated approach to knowledge synthesis provides exploration capabilities that individual cultures could never achieve. Roman engineering expertise enables construction of vessels designed for extended oceanic voyages. Carthaginian navigation knowledge, enhanced by Alliance astronomical calculations, provides guidance systems that can maintain accurate positioning across any distance. Indian mathematical precision allows detailed mapping and measurement of discovered territories. The first major expedition launches in 255 BCE, with results that shock even Alliance planners who authorize the project. A fleet of 30 vessels, each designed using hybrid construction techniques that incorporate the best elements from multiple maritime traditions, departs from Alliance bases in the Eastern Atlantic with orders to systematically explore and map all oceanic regions extending southward from known African territories. The ships themselves represent revolutionary advances in ancient naval architecture. Hulls built using Roman concrete techniques reinforced with Indian metallurgical innovations can withstand oceanic conditions that would destroy traditional Mediterranean vessels. Sails and rigging systems adapted from Carthaginian designs, enhanced by Atlantic indigenous knowledge of wind patterns, enable navigation in weather conditions that would strand conventional ancient fleets. But the expedition's most impressive capability isn't technological, it's organizational. Each vessel carries specialists from multiple cultural backgrounds who can collaborate on challenges that individual traditions couldn't handle alone. Roman surveyors work with Indian astronomers to create mapping systems of unprecedented accuracy. Carthaginian navigators collaborate with Egyptian engineers to establish coastal settlements that can serve as permanent bases for further exploration. The results of this first systematic exploration exceed every expectation. The expedition discovers and maps thousands of miles of previously unknown African coastline, establishing the true extent of the continent for the first time in human history. They chart oceanic currents and wind patterns that enable reliable navigation routes connecting Atlantic and Indian Ocean territories. More significantly, they encounter indigenous populations who possess knowledge and resources that enhance Alliance capabilities in ways that individual cultural traditions never could. African coastal peoples contribute navigation techniques adapted for local conditions while providing access to resources that strengthen Alliance supply networks. Inland communities offer agricultural knowledge that enables Alliance settlements to become self-sufficient in environmental conditions that Mediterranean populations never experienced. The integration process follows Alliance patterns that have proven successful throughout their expansion. Rather than imposing foreign rule on encountered populations, expedition members offer partnership in the most prosperous commercial and cultural network the world has ever seen. Local knowledge is valued and incorporated while indigenous peoples gain access to Alliance educational systems and economic opportunities. The response is overwhelmingly positive. Communities that have lived in relative isolation for generations suddenly find themselves connected to transcontinental networks that provide access to goods, ideas, and opportunities they never knew existed. Alliance membership offers individual advancement possibilities while respecting cultural traditions and local autonomy. This successful integration creates another positive feedback loop that strengthens alliance capabilities while expanding their reach. Each newly contacted population contributes unique knowledge and resources that enhance alliance effectiveness in future explorations. Local expertise guides subsequent expeditions, while indigenous innovations improve alliance technologies and methods. By 250 BCE, alliance exploration fleets are operating simultaneously in multiple oceanic regions, with coordination that demonstrates their administrative systems can manage global operations as effectively as they handle transcontinental governance. Southern African expeditions map the continent's complete coastline while establishing trade relationships with dozens of previously unknown communities. Eastern Atlantic fleets chart island chains and oceanic routes that connect African territories to alliance bases in Europe and the Mediterranean. But the alliance's most ambitious exploration project targets the vast oceanic regions that separate their Atlantic territories from the Asian mainland. Using astronomical navigation techniques refined through their systematic exploration program, alliance fleets begin crossing the Pacific Ocean with objectives that dwarf any previous maritime expedition in human history. These trans-Pacific voyages represent the ultimate test of alliance, organizational and technological capabilities. Expeditions must remain at sea for months while maintaining accurate navigation across oceanic distances that no ancient civilization ever attempted to traverse. They must establish supply bases on islands separated by thousands of miles of open water while coordinating with alliance administrators in territories they left months earlier. The success of these Pacific expeditions establishes the alliance as something unprecedented in human history. A truly global civilization with operational capabilities that span the entire planetary surface. Alliance settlements now exist on every continent while their exploration fleets chart oceanic regions that connect previously isolated landmasses into integrated commercial and cultural networks. The knowledge gained through systematic global exploration accelerates alliance technological development in ways that individual cultures could never achieve. Mapping the complete planetary surface reveals resource distributions that enable more efficient allocation of materials and production. Understanding global climate patterns improves agricultural planning and seasonal coordination across alliance territories. Comprehensive knowledge of oceanic currents and wind systems makes maritime travel safer and more profitable than any ancient civilization thought possible. But perhaps the most significant impact of global exploration is what it reveals about human potential when artificial limitations are removed. The Alliance has proven that ancient civilizations can achieve comprehensive knowledge of the planetary environment when they combine diverse cultural expertise with systematic organizational methods. Their success demonstrates that human societies can transcend traditional geographical boundaries when they focus on cooperation rather than competition. This global perspective creates opportunities that no previous civilization could have imagined. Alliance administrators can now make strategic decisions based on complete knowledge of planetary resources and environmental conditions. They can coordinate activities across every inhabited region while maintaining cultural diversity and local autonomy. They can plan projects that utilize the full spectrum of human knowledge and capability. The Alliance's global reach also positions them to consider possibilities that extend beyond traditional concepts of ancient achievement. Their comprehensive knowledge of planetary resources and environments, combined with their advanced astronomical calculations, begins to suggest projects that could establish human presence beyond Earth's surface itself. Alliance astronomers, working with complete data sets from every culture within their territories, begin developing theoretical frameworks for understanding celestial mechanics that approach what we might recognize as early space science. Their calculations describe lunar cycles, planetary positions, and stellar movements with precision that enable accurate predictions extending far into the future. More intriguingly, their enhanced understanding of engineering principles and resource availability begins to suggest construction possibilities that could extend human activity beyond the planetary surface. Theoretical designs for structures that could reach extreme altitudes, vehicles that could navigate using celestial mechanics, even speculative concepts for establishing human settlements beyond Earth's atmosphere. These ideas remain theoretical during the Alliance's classical period, but their development establishes intellectual foundations that position future generations to pursue achievements that transcend traditional limitations of ancient technology. The Alliance's global civilization creates knowledge bases and organizational capabilities that could support projects extending human presence throughout the solar system. By 245 BCE, 65 years after the initial conquest of Egypt, the Alliance has achieved something that challenges every assumption about ancient limitations. They've established sustainable governance systems that span the entire planetary surface while maintaining cultural diversity and individual opportunity. They've developed technological capabilities that enable systematic exploration and mapping of global environments. They've created organizational methods that can coordinate activities across oceanic distances while adapting to any geographic or cultural conditions. Their success demonstrates that human societies can achieve comprehensive mastery of planetary environments when they combine diverse knowledge with cooperative organizational principles. Different cultures can maintain their distinct identities while participating in shared projects that benefit everyone. Local expertise and global coordination can coexist in ways that strengthen both community traditions and transcontinental networks. But the Alliance's greatest achievement isn't territorial, technological, or organizational, it's philosophical. They've proven that human potential is limited only by the scope of human imagination and cooperation. Their global civilization shows that artificial barriers between peoples and regions need not prevent collaborative achievement on scales that individual cultures could never accomplish alone. This philosophical revolution establishes precedents that will influence human development for millennia. The idea that different groups can cooperate for mutual benefit while maintaining their distinct characteristics represents a fundamental transformation in human political thinking. The demonstration that systematic knowledge gathering can enable mastery of planetary environments provides models for future scientific and technological development. The Alliance's success also creates new questions that will challenge future generations. If human societies can achieve comprehensive mastery of planetary environments through cooperation and systematic knowledge gathering, what other possibilities might become achievable when artificial limitations are removed? Could human civilization transcend traditional boundaries of terrestrial existence when guided by principles of shared benefit rather than competitive exploitation? These questions position the Alliance's successors to contemplate achievements that extend beyond traditional concepts of ancient possibility. Their global reach, combined with their accumulated knowledge and organizational expertise, establishes foundations for developments that could reshape human understanding of what civilization can accomplish. The Alliance stands as proof that human societies can transcend any limitation when they embrace cooperation over conflict, diversity over uniformity, and shared benefit over individual exploitation. Their global civilization demonstrates that human potential is constrained only by the scope of human vision and the willingness to pursue possibilities that previous generations never dared to imagine. The stage is set for developments that will test the ultimate boundaries of human achievement while establishing precedents that could influence the species for thousands of years. Because the Alliance has proven that when human societies combine their diverse strengths in pursuit of shared goals, the only remaining limitations are those imposed by the boundaries of imagination itself. Their legacy will be measured not just by the territories they controlled or the technologies they developed, but by the precedent they established. That human civilization can achieve anything when it chooses cooperation over conquest, integration over exploitation, and shared prosperity over individual dominance. The Alliance has shown that the greatest victories are those that benefit everyone, and the most enduring achievements are those that transcend the limitations previous generations accepted as immutable. What happens next in our alternate timeline isn't just the culmination of everything we've explored, it's the moment when the Maurya and Gupta alliance achieves something that will echo through eternity itself. By 240 BCE, their global civilization faces the ultimate test of sustainability, and their response will determine whether this extraordinary experiment in human cooperation becomes humanity's greatest triumph or its most spectacular cautionary tale. Picture this final scenario unfolding across their vast territories. The Alliance now governs a planetary civilization that spans every continent, connects every ocean, and includes virtually every human population on Earth. Their administrative networks coordinate activities across distances that should make central management impossible. Their economic systems generate wealth that exceeds anything previous civilizations could have imagined. Their technological capabilities enable projects that transcend traditional boundaries of ancient achievement. But here's the twist that changes everything. This unprecedented success creates challenges that no human organization has ever confronted. Managing a global civilization requires constant adaptation to problems that have no historical precedents. Cultural integration on a planetary scale generates tensions that threaten the very diversity that made the alliance successful. Resource allocation across oceanic distances strains even their sophisticated administrative systems. The alliance's response to these challenges reveals the true genius of their organizational philosophy. Rather than trying to impose uniform solutions across their diverse territories, they develop what amounts to humanity's first truly adaptive governance system. Local communities maintain autonomy over their immediate concerns while participating in transcontinental networks that coordinate responses to global challenges. This adaptive approach creates resilience that traditional ancient systems could never achieve. When natural disasters disrupt one region, resources and expertise flow from others without destabilizing the entire system. When cultural conflicts arise between different communities, resolution mechanisms that respect all perspectives while maintaining institutional coherence provide solutions that satisfy everyone involved. But the Alliance's greatest innovation during this final period isn't administrative, it's philosophical. They develop what we might recognize as early concepts of sustainable development, understanding that their global civilization must operate within planetary boundaries while ensuring prosperity for future generations. This sustainability focus drives technological developments that accelerate human capabilities while preserving environmental conditions. Agricultural techniques that increase productivity while improving soil quality enable alliance territories to support much larger populations without depleting natural resources. Construction methods that utilize renewable materials while creating durable infrastructure establish precedents for building practices that could endure for millennia. The Alliance's commitment to sustainability also influences their approach to expansion and development. Rather than pursuing growth for its own sake, they focus on optimizing existing systems while exploring possibilities that enhance human potential without consuming planetary resources faster than they can be renewed. This philosophical maturation positions the Alliance to consider their ultimate legacy. Having achieved comprehensive mastery of planetary environments and established governance systems that can adapt to any challenge, they begin contemplating what they can leave for future generations that will transcend the limitations of their own era. Their answer represents the culmination of everything they've learned about human cooperation, technological development, and sustainable prosperity. The Alliance begins developing what they call the Great Archive, a comprehensive repository of human knowledge designed to preserve their accumulated wisdom for civilizations that might emerge thousands of years in the future. But this isn't just a collection of texts and artifacts. The Great Archive is an integrated system that preserves not just information, but the methods and principles that made the Alliance successful. Future civilizations that discover Alliance sites will find not just records of what they accomplished, but guidance for how human societies can transcend traditional limitations through cooperation and systematic knowledge gathering. The construction of Great Archive sites throughout Alliance territories represents their final gift to humanity. These repositories, built using their most advanced engineering techniques and positioned in locations that can survive any conceivable catastrophe, ensure that Alliance wisdom will endure regardless of what happens to their global civilization. By 235 BCE, as Alliance leaders contemplate the completion of their Great Archive project, they can survey achievements that dwarf anything in human history. They've created sustainable prosperity across multiple continents while preserving cultural diversity and individual opportunity. They've developed technologies that enable human mastery of planetary environments without depleting natural resources. They've established governance systems that can adapt to any challenge while maintaining principles of cooperation and mutual benefit. Most importantly, they've proven that human societies can transcend any limitation when they choose collaboration over competition, diversity over uniformity, and shared prosperity over individual exploitation. Their global civilization stands as eternal testimony that human potential is constrained only by the scope of human imagination and the willingness to embrace possibilities that previous generations never dared to contemplate. The Maurya and Gupta alliance's ultimate legacy isn't the territories they controlled or the technologies they developed. It's the precedent they established that human civilization can achieve anything when it combines diverse strengths in pursuit of shared goals. They showed that the greatest victories are those that benefit everyone, and the most enduring achievements are those that transcend the limitations previous generations accepted as unchangeable. In our timeline, Rome and Carthage would eventually clash in wars that defined Mediterranean civilization for centuries. But in this alternate world, their defeat by an alliance that offered something better than conquest created a global civilization that rewrote the rules of human achievement itself. The Maurya and Gupta alliance didn't just change history, they proved that history could be whatever humanity chose to make it, when guided by wisdom, cooperation, and the courage to imagine possibilities beyond traditional boundaries. That's the world that could have been, and perhaps more importantly, it's a reminder of the world that could still be if we have the vision to pursue it.